mentioned the Bernard Lietaer and you know, the abundance of talent and skill and resource that exists in a community, and the abundance of need. And one of the things that he said in the book that I read that got me to change my whole life and start a time bank in my community was he gives a little anecdote about what if a Martian came to Detroit and looked around and saw all the crumbling infrastructure, boarded up buildings, kids coming home from school with nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to take care of them. And then also saw all the people sitting around bored, feeling worthless because they don't have work, and then learns, you know, what are these people waiting for? And someone explains, well, they're waiting for money to connect the skills and the talents with the needs. And he asks, well, what is money? Well, money is an agreement to exchange something, you know, to exchange something for something else. Then the Martian, once he learned that, would wonder if there was intelligent life on the planet. And that just really struck me, and I had the same reaction you did when I read about, like, oh, why haven't we been doing that all along, and it must be too good to be true. And I also got in this situation where I found it, I kept reading about all these positive impacts, as you would expect, when people come together and share their gifts as equals. I kept reading about it and thinking it sounded too good to be true, and then I remember getting on some phone calls with people who had time banks. I was like, what? This really happens? So, but now, with the Dane County Time Bank in Madison that we started, is going to turn 5 in October. We have over 1,600 members. 100 of those are organizations, a lot of human service organizations, schools, our utility companies, a member, and everyone is participating in a system of equal exchange. They've exchanged about 60,000 hours of service so far. We've used it to create a youth court program to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system. One of our schools that was having a lot of trouble is using it to help bring more resources into the school. We'll tell you a lot more in depth about some of these specific projects, how they work, how you can make that stuff happen in your community, and you will participate in figuring out what your dreams are and how you can use it. So this will become more participatory after we give you the overview. But I was going to tell you the history of time banking, but we are fortunate enough to have the founder of time banking, Edgar Cahn, here. So I'd like him to tell how it started and whatever else you want to say about it. You might have to yell.
It started, as I said, in a hospital bed, but it also started because I came out of the civil rights movement, and it was clear we were winning some battles and losing the war on everything that mattered to me anyway. And I thought the most important thing we could do would be to say to people for whom the market had no use that what you have to offer is special and needed, that every human being has not just one thing, but if you ask yourself what portion of you is on your resume, if it's even 5% of who you are, I'd be surprised. Most people do not put on their resume that they know how to tie their shoes. But if you think about kids in preschool, they need to learn how to tie their shoes. And we don't know anybody who is coming out of many of the dropout kids whom we deal with could easily teach first and second graders the alphabet and simple arithmetic. But instead we classify them as special ed students, and by the time they're in 5th and 6th grade or 4th grade, the light's going out of their eyes. And so part of it is how do we begin to put people and needs together in terms of, we started with trying to reduce the number of people who went into nursing homes. Now in Montpelier, Vermont, we're testing a new form of long-term care insurance, where people pay regular premiums in time dollars and a little bit of money to pay the coordinator. And the notion is that if they have a specific need, they will have a level of guaranteed assurance, because there'll be a whole bunch of people who will be paying their premiums in time dollars, maybe helping each other, maybe doing a community project, maybe working with a nonprofit. So that the number of uses are multiplying. In Washington, D.C., I oversaw the founding of a youth court that now handles 70% of all nonviolent crime by teenagers, and the teenagers are on the jury, or about 80% of them are former offenders, talking to kids who did just what they did a few months before. They've reduced recidivism by over 50%. They're doing more, frankly, for the rule of law than my law students. And so I think that we need to really say, how do we begin to rebuild the community? I'll simply say this. When I started asking myself, how do we put people and needs together, and in what my sons call olden days, we used to use money to do that. And I thought, well, why can't we, if we're not going to have any of the old kind of money, why can't we create a new kind of money? And the critical issue for me became price. How do you value what people have? And when I looked at money, I realized that money defines value in a way that I couldn't live with. Money defines value very usefully when it comes to scarcity. So that if a thing is scarce, it's more expensive. If it's more valuable. If it's more abundant, it's cheaper. If it's really abundant, it's dirt cheap or worthless. And I suddenly realized that that meant that every capacity that defined me as a human being was worthless. Every capacity that enabled our species to survive, we have devalued. Our willingness to care for each other, to teach each other, to come to each other's rescue, to make democracy work, to raise hell about things we want to raise hell about, to take care of the elderly, to hold officials accountable. All of the fundamental capacities that we need, we devalue. And I thought it's about time we started valuing what it meant to be a human being and all the ways in which human beings could help each other. And that really meant creating a medium of exchange that valued that, because what a medium of exchange does is it creates a database around capacity and a database around need, and enables you to put the two together. And so part of this has been made possible really by personal computers and software, and now internet-based software that enables us to know whom we can trust, who's available, what skills there are, and it's being used in different ways. I was mentioning to all of us that it's being used in prisons in Scotland. We've created a Homecomers Academy in Washington, D.C. It's being used with the elderly. It's being used in mental health. Lisa will tell you about how it's being used for families whose kids have either bipolar or schizophrenic or autism or have special emotional needs, so that the nature of and the range of needs is really unlimited. And I'll simply stop there and say that I'm excited to be here because it's about social justice.
Thanks. So one of the things that Edgar was referring to about the abundance of what makes us human, caregiving and civic engagement and creativity, is something we refer to as the core economy. So the market-based economy overlooks a whole lot of activity that happens and a whole lot of need and a whole lot of skill. And so time banking is a way that we can lift up the core economy and recognize the value. A lot of the core economic tasks through history have been relying on exploited labor or traditional gender roles that people have broken out of, and rather than find a new constructive way to fill that, we've sort of let it wither on the vine in different ways, but of course it keeps chugging along because we require it in order to sustain our lives. But using time banking to facilitate and value without commodifying, we don't put a price on stuff, we don't charge for taking care of kids, but to facilitate it and value it without commodifying it can really help to boost and increase the level of availability to those resources. For example, the kids coming home from school with no one to come home to. They might have a neighbor who can read with them or play with them, and they don't know about it until they join the time bank and list the assets that everybody in the community has. So time banking, I'm going to say the mechanics just to make sure that everybody knows, because it's simple, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the philosophy, and then we'll move into actual projects that are happening. But the mechanics of it are people or organizations will join their time bank, and as part of joining it, you list what you can do for other people, and you list what you need. And it can be something as simple as visiting someone who's homebound, or teaching a young kid to tie his shoes. It can be complicated, like fixing a computer or teaching a language, anything at all. It doesn't have to be marketable. What we use is some web-based software, so we'll list offers and requests, and people will spell out exactly what their experience is. I'm a total amateur, but I love to do this. or I have credentials in this area. So people list out so people can make an informed choice about who they want to call, and they list out what they need. Every hour you spend helping another member, you get an hour in your account. You can call it a time dollar, a time bank hour, a time credit. It's called different things in different places, but it's always an hour per hour. You can break it down. You can do 15 minutes of service and have 15 minutes in your account, but everyone's time is valued equally. We don't say that there's a price to it. We don't give it a monetary equivalence at all. And then once and you've earned your hour, you can go and spend it to get help from another member. One of the things about time banking, it's a form of mutual credit. Some of you have probably learned about some of these types of systems. It's a form of mutual credit, so it means we extend credit to each other. So in many time banks, if not, I guess most time banks, you can spend your time bank hours before you earn them. I always tell our members, we don't care, we're not accountants, this isn't the point. The point for us is to facilitate the exchange. We want people to get what they need and to use their time and talents the way they want to use them. So in our time bank, someone will join because they really need help moving really fast. So they'll get a crew of people to come and help them move, and then they'll have a balance of minus how many hours they needed to use, and they can make that up doing whatever they like, whenever they like, however they like. So it's very flexible. And the way a lot of times people connect it in their minds with volunteerism, and one of the beauties of time making is volunteering tends to attract people who grow up in a volunteerism sort of environment, and people who feel either like they have a duty or a luxury to volunteer. If you're working 3 jobs to make ends meet, a lot of times you're not going to have time to volunteer. But time making brings people in to do stuff for each other who don't normally volunteer, and brings in a whole new cadre of people who can do things for each other and who will engage in helping out in their community. And we recognize that the type of work that people do as volunteers, there's no reason that work should be done for free, where some very destructive work earns tons of money. So that's one of the things, is recognizing that every kind of work has value, whether it's community building, caregiving, anything, and it has equal value. And that's frankly, when I first started our time bank, that wasn't what I was attracted to about time banking. I was attracted to time banking as something that we could do instead of having to beg for money for every little project that we want to do. We can go ahead and do our project and use our time and talents to create the exchange. But once I got involved in time banking and was immersed in participating in an economy as equals, it feels really different and it feels really good. And I think a lot of our members get that, but you kind of need to try it out before you realize it. And we have members who come to the time bank because they need rides to the doctor and have no other way to get them, so their social worker will refer them to the time bank. We have people who come to the time bank because they need a roof put on their house and they don't have any way to do it. And then they get involved and learn through experience about different people from different backgrounds, different levels of ability, and learn through experience about the fact that an economy based on equality and based on recognizing everyone's assets feels really good, and it feels really different, and it's possible, and it's real. So that's sort of the overview. At this point, there are time banks in 32 countries around the world. Edgar has a list if you need to. Oh no, 33. If you need some, and there are around 100 time banks in this country, and it's really taking off. And there's no better time than right now, when people are really seeing firsthand what's wrong with the market economy. We have a really great opportunity to fill the void with something very positive, and I think it's really important that we really work to do that. And as you probably are aware, a lot of times when we end up in economic strife, that's when people get pitted against each other. That's when we're divided and conquered. This is a way that we can unite and conquer. So that's a big part of why I do it. So Cheryl, would you like to talk about the core values?
So there are 5 core values.
I better go first.
Okay.
I'll go with reciprocity.
Okay. And what do you?
Basically, the idea of both giving and receiving. Like I was talking about before, there's a lot of people who are service recipients, but time banking gives them the opportunity to also give and know what it feels like to do something helpful for somebody else and be needed a little bit in that way. So,
Yeah, it's better when it's a two-way street.
two-way street,
It's
yeah.
a two-way street, yeah. Okay?
Also, it's also good for, you know, there's a lot of people too that just volunteer and give and give and give and don't recognize that they also have needs that other people can help them address. Everybody has things that they need or want, and everybody has things that they can do for other people.
Lisa, you have one?
I'll go with redefining work.
Redefining work?
So with time banking, sometimes again going back to core economy or market economy, sometimes there's a much higher value if somebody is getting paid to do something, and we all do things that are valuable every day. And how do we redefine that in a way that it's seen as valuable and can contribute and be part of the community? So especially if I'm a person with disabilities and I actually, in order to access my Medicaid services, if I am penalized to go out and make certain levels in the work world, I have lots I can contribute and be part of that and redefining what that means to the work world. So there's lots of examples of how we all want to be valued and contribute. So how do we redefine that in a way that everybody feels part of, that their work is valuable, without it just being monetary?
I'm going to take one. I'll take assets. We all have something to give. We all have something to give. We all are contributors. You know, many times, you know, I don't know if we're trained to think that we have less. I don't know what it is about. I'm serious. It's just like we all feel like we just, you know, there's, you know, when you're introducing this whole concept, and you may start off a meeting like we did, people will say, well, I don't have anything to give. But everybody has something to give. Everybody in this room, everybody in this world has something to give. No matter what your race, ethnicity, your abilities are, you know, we all have something to give. So I like assets. You have one?
I'm good.
Okay.
So I'm taking community. And the community value is that we are stronger together. It's very simple that when we become isolated, we're just not fulfilled in nearly the same way as when we're together with others, sharing our strengths. So that's the community value of time banks.
I'll mention the last one that we added we call respect, because you know, we all take each other for granted, and people are silent, and we think that the voices of people need to be heard and listened to and amplified, and that we need to hold officials accountable. We need to hold everybody accountable because we speak on behalf of those who are silent and who have been silent a long time. But I want to say something about each of those values. You can talk about them as a positive value to be advanced, but they have a flip side, and that when you look at what the world is from a perspective of injustice, each one of those has a different, comes out differently. Assets to me means stop throwing away people. No more throwaway people. Work means stop the free rides that we take off of women and immigrants and minorities. And reciprocity means stop exacting dependency as the price of help. And community means stop invoking privacy and confidentiality to keep people isolated and apart from each other. And respect means stop exacting silence and pretending that because people don't have a voice or resources, that what they have to say and isn't in fact a source of wisdom. So each one of those, when you view each of those values not as something to move toward, but what happens when it's absent, you get a very different perspective, because time banking really draws on two kinds of energy. It draws on our desire for connectedness, our desire to reach out to each other, but it also draws on the energy that comes when you get angry. When you get angry about what happens when people are, when that value is missing. And both kinds of energy are needed really to make a difference. And sometimes we've got to react to injustice, and sometimes we've got to move toward something that we call justice.
Okay, thank you. So what I'd like to do is ask you all to participate after hearing what the time banking core values are, which to look at them and think about which one resonate with you in terms of either individually or in your community. Which one, and then share. Share with us, yeah.
The redefining worship Lisa was talking about, right?
Uh-huh.
It immediately spoke to me to the fact that I've gotten a number of discussions with people about my mom was pretty feminist, but she had this duality of that she loved cooking and loved doing all this stuff, but she was like, no, I don't want to, you know, I'm not going to do it, you know? And I watched this ridiculous, you know, drama go on, and it was frustrating because I know why she was doing it. Much more later, I understood she had to really define herself as valuable. And whether it's gender, whether it's color, language, you know, whatever, that what you're talking about, people not getting valued for what they do is something that we are trained to do, and it holds us down. So I see it as a tremendous tool for for empowerment, just to say let's uplift ourselves and see ourselves as people. So.
Someone else? Okay.
I think assets. In working with communities in Birmingham, there's often, well, in listening to their stories and hearing that they will frequently say, I didn't see myself as being poor until I was told I was living in poverty. And it immediately made me realize how we extract power by defining people in different ways. And so once you define someone as poor and living in poverty, there's this lack of voice. And if you get people to realize, no, you have something that's very valuable, because oftentimes it is the poor communities, and I hate to use the word poor now, but the ones that we would define economically as poor are the ones that are richest in caring for each other. And it's like we have all of these new developments going up trying to recreate community, and they're missing the point. So I think that assets, letting everybody know that everybody is a value.
You gave me the chills. You did. Someone else?
I agree with George, but I also like number 5 too.
Respect.
Respect. Working in the community and working with homeless, most of the women and men there have a lot of skills that they can, you know, give. But also on the other hand is the respect. You know, they're always saying, well, I'm not this, I'm not that. You know, you are that, you are somebody, you know, and we respect you, you know, we love you. So I'll go with 3 and 5.
Thank you.
I'm actually dealing with community on a number of different levels. I just started a book that I actually have with me called Community by Peter Block. I'd highly recommend it. Just kind of thinking about what it really means to be in a community and to create community with different groups of people. Thinking about how I personally want to work with the different communities that I'm a part of. And then also at Tulane, they've done a good job of getting out in the community, but there's a lot more work to do. And so helping students fully integrate in the community they're living in, because it's very easy to stay in that academic bubble. Yeah.
I would also choose community. I'm just imagining how much more networking and interaction goes on with timeshares, and you're just reaching a diversity of people with skills that you may not have. And and I'm sure learning a lot from those interactions too. It's not like you just pay someone to come in and do that. They may be coming into your home and you have an interaction and you say hello, and I just think that particular value would really flourish with this system.
I'd like to talk about community in a negative, the negative aspect of it. We live in a very highly, a very poor area where people are very dispersed out. There's no public transportation in all of Southern Ohio, none whatsoever. So the most isolated and the most poor can't come together. And it's perplexed me to think about how would you do time banking when people can't get anywhere, when they can't, even if they wanted to volunteer to help, they couldn't. There's no public transportation, and often the cars are just a wreck. So this is a really big problem for us. Everybody yearns for community, but we don't know how to make it happen in this dispersed state.
I see one other hand. Tony?
That's
Helen?
I'll
Yeah,
also-
she, I think she's.
I'll also speak on community. I live in a city that actually has a quite active community, but you can still kind of see divisions of, there's the business community, and then there's like the hipsters and musicians and the PTA members and the seniors. Although it is a very like tight-knit, very great active community, I see time banks as a way to like bridge those different divisions.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you for sharing.
So we're going to move into talking about a few different models of time banking, a few different ways that it's been taken and applied toward a goal that people have in their community. Juvenile justice, keeping kids out of the juvenile justice system, giving people access to hard goods that they need when they live in poverty, and bringing people together to reduce violence and bringing different races and ethnicities together. So we're going to go a little bit more in depth about a few of those models. I think a lot of time banks will start in one neighborhood to bring the neighbors together, or in one retirement community to help retirees connect with each other. There was a time bank in Brooklyn called Elder Plan, and it was an HMO, and they would give their members a discount on their premium if they joined the member-to-member time bank, and then the members would do things for each other. They had a couple gentlemen who did a home repair service, and other members would cook for each other, members would go read for each other, and they found that connecting them reduced their isolation, as you can imagine, reduced nursing home stays, kept the stays shorter. There are time banks in hospitals that use time banking to have patients who are leaving help other patients who are just getting out of the hospital for their aftercare. So again, as a way to connect people, so you don't have to rely on the service provider, you don't have to call the expert. We're all experts, we all have something that we can do for each other, but just the fact of connecting people who wouldn't normally meet. In our time bank, we have a lot of members with developmental disabilities, we have members who are homeless, we have members who are wealthy, and one of the things that's been cool for me is to see some of our earliest members joined because they wanted to give and they liked the concept, they wanted to do things for other people. And I remember one of our early members ended up meeting another member and doing a lot of exchanges with her and really liking and respecting her, and then learned that she was homeless and was shocked that she was homeless. She didn't fit this member's perception of what someone who was homeless would be like, as though there's a type of person who runs into trouble and loses their home. But that aspect of things, I think, is one of the biggest powers of time banking, is the ability you connect because they have something that you need or you have something that they need, and it's that simple, and then it opens up whole new worlds for people. But it also, I mentioned the certain areas where, like a hospital or something that applies it, you can use it to apply it to a lot of different goals or problems that you might have in your community. And one of the ways that, and you can use it to change systems, again, so we work together instead of having someone up here who tells us what we can and can't do, or what we do and don't need, and then we're reaching up. So I've often thought about it. Part of why I came to time banking is I was really involved in drug policy. I see the war on drugs as one of our primary social justice problems and racial justice problems in this country. because people are getting locked up for nonviolent offenses, and families are being torn apart, and it's applied completely unequally, and all different things like that. So I was really involved, before I knew about time banking, I was really involved in drug policy, and we would do a lot of public forums, and we would bring in the DA and the police department, the head of the narcotics and gang task force, and people would acknowledge there's a lot of stuff that works better for people than locking them up and tearing apart their families. But our DA used to always say, but we don't have anything else we can do. We don't have enough money for treatment. We don't have enough money for community centers. We don't have enough money for counseling. What you really need to do is stop bugging us and go advocate for that stuff. And then I realized when I learned about time banking, I was like, this is it. We can make that stuff. We don't have to wait for someone to give us money. We have the capacity in our community to take care of the people who need to be taken care of. So that's one of my reasons for starting the time bank, is to build that community capacity so we can say, okay, now you can stop, because we can do that now. So I kind of have always viewed it as, here's all of us reaching up our hands, trying to get the resources we need, and here's the big benevolent hand of whoever has the money, whoever you're applying for the grant. As people who run nonprofit organizations or social service organizations who participate in that, that hand can really quickly turn into a giant foot stomping all over your project. And then I realized this is a way we can join our hands together and create what we want to create with each other, using our time and our talents. So, so one of the sort of newer wave of time banks is time banks that exist to create the tool and then pull people in to use the tool. So our time bank in Dane County, we started by identifying some community needs and bringing in the partners we needed. We have cities who started time banks in the city. Our city is one of our partners. Our bus system now is giving us bus passes that we can make available for time bank hours, so that's one example. I know that it's really easy to identify a lot of needs in cities that aren't being met, like you could clean up the bus shelters, you could post the bus schedules in the shelters, you can have anybody come and do that. You can have people clear the snow so someone in a wheelchair can get to the bus stop. But those are some of the things that we identified, and then we identify who needs to be involved and show that there's a tool there that works. So we're going to hear from a few different people about their project-based time banks and hear a little bit more in depth about how they work. Then we'll create our own after that. So but I want you to hear about some that exist so you can get ideas about how you could create your own. So Cheryl, do you want to start with Sabrani Park? Lori, do you want to start with our youth court? Oh, I thought you were pointing at Lori.
No, I was
start.
No, I was just kind of writing down some of the key things about the Sabrani Park time bank. I'm going to remain seated. Is that okay with everybody?
Yeah.
Good. As I said before, for those of you who just arrived, Sabrani Park, let me just give you a little bit about the demographics. I worked for the public health department as a professional, and my role was to get out there in the neighborhood, and because there's a lot of violence and a lot of crime, people hanging out, kids, and the neighborhood is predominantly African American, and the newcomers to the neighborhood are Latinos, mostly monolingual Spanish-speaking folk. So the African Americans have been there since the 50s. This particular neighborhood is an isolated little neighborhood on the other side of railroad tracks near the freeway, and Sabrante meaning separate, apart, right? So here, sure enough, it's this little piece right off in the far east of East Oakland. A lot of crime and what have you. But the wonderful thing about this neighborhood is that they have elementary, middle, and high school there. They have 3 parks and tree-lined streets and a bunch of pit bulls. And but most of the parks are closed because this is where the kids been hanging out, you know, with the pants down and everything. And the gangs, the Norentes and the Sorrentes, you know, the Latinos and what have you, graffiti, you know, and a liquor store. But a lot of the African Americans in the past remembered how this little neighborhood used to be very vibrant when it had stores and shoe shines and, you know, what have you, and a gas station and all kinds of stuff. So I was asked to go in and organize and bring these together to help reduce the violence. And so as I mentioned, I was introduced to time banking, and I said, well, how can we use this tool to really look at change in terms of, one, the built environment. How can we reverse the way in which these parks are looking so people can get back out there and play and the kids can have a safe place to play. We did a survey, door-to-door survey, and that was the way in which I began to organize the community, getting them to hear from them as to what was the cause, what they felt was the issues in their neighborhood. So they said lack of youth activities for the kids, drug use and drug sales, access to grocery stores and what have you, and period. Those are the top three things. And so, and the fact that the Latinos and African Americans didn't speak to each other. So along this time was Katrina. So I said, God, how can I do this? How can I bring these two people, groups of, they can't speak the same language, they don't like each other, African Americans have problems with Latinos, you know, because of the language issues and the differences in culture. But anyway, when Katrina happened and I brought them all together with this community forum, I really asked the question, if Katrina happened here, right here, you're right near the bay, the water's right here, and we had a Katrina, do you think the city of Oakland would respond to you? Do you think this would be the neighborhood that they would come to? Or do you think they'd come to the more wealthy neighborhoods in Oakland? Because a lot of people don't know Oakland. Oakland has from the very wealthy to more impoverished neighborhoods. So, of course, they said no and brought them together. So from that point, everything I did, I wanted to equal from the get-go. So everything I did is Spanish-English. I forgot my brochures. Even my brochures are split right down the middle, no front, back. Every English and Spanish on the front. I want everything equal. So we do simultaneous Spanish-English, and I need to give you this background so you can get the picture of what is happening here. Everything is Spanish-English. Everybody came to the community forum. We listed all of the issues that they had identified from the survey, and we began an action planning process, which I do, in which you prioritize what are the issues by voting. And then, so we had the issues. So then we formed the time bank. And folks wanted to join the time bank. And so Edgar and Chris came out. And this is so important. I really want to stress the importance of the training that we had in bringing the public health professionals, the evaluators, the city of Oakland, the probation department, the schools, the neighborhood service providers, the residents from the neighborhood, both groups, the homecomers, the men who were in re-entry trying to get back to the neighborhood. And another key thing that I did was I only focused the time bank in this small neighborhood. I didn't want it to be broad. You're going to hear from others who have a larger. We wanted our small, just specific, because I wanted to reduce the violence. And so this is a co-production type of time bank in which I had to do two things. I had to present a concept that took care of two things. Take care of what the residents needed, right, in terms of change. They wanted a better neighborhood, a grocery store, this or that, and a better parks, and the kids, give them something to do. But at the same time, what the health department wanted was to reduce violence. But they also wanted to build a partnership between themselves and the neighborhood, a trusting relationship. And how was that going to happen? When residents are feeling like we're forgotten, we're clientized, you always come up in the neighborhood telling us what we need versus listening to us. So that little activity that I did when I started is the way I start, which starts off with assets. It starts off with one of the very core values of time banking. And so it was pretty easy once I had gathered this group together, and we had about 75, 40 of them were youth. 40 of them were youth. And I'm talking about the hardcore knucklehead youth. You know, I mean, they was coming up there smelling like marijuana and everything else. I'm serious. So I had to, you know, I had to shift into my deal with the kids, you know, kind of behavior so that they would remain, and they loved it. I couldn't believe it. These are the gold tooth wearing kids, pants drop bad, I mean, hardcore. And I also invited them in, and this is the way the health department became one of the members of the time bank. And what they gave was professionals to be mentors to where kids from the neighborhood would come into and work with us. Sit there and they had their own little cubicle, their computer. They felt like, hey, you know, we've arrived. Also, they had internships. And so what the health department also provided was space for meetings, you know. Also, this is key, the time bank is located in a church. So it's located in the local church, which is also in this neighborhood. So that got the church members involved. It's located on the top floor in the church. So what the church provides is one of our policies, that our advisory board with the time bank, they did not want to do child care one-to-one. You know, they didn't want to say, okay, you could do child care. What they said, it had to have many parents provide child care to one child because they didn't trust, right? So the church on Fridays provides parents' night out so that all the parents in that neighborhood can bring their kids and drop them off, and the congregation takes care of the kids. So the church gives. What the church receives, the church happens to be located on an alleyway where there's graffiti all on the side as the kids walking back to school. So the kids now paint and give back to the church by keeping that wall clean. They paint on a regular basis. So there's just all kinds of ways. And so what has happened now on a monthly basis, so they're providing for each other. Of course, we do the one-to-one exchanges where, and everything is equal, like Stephanie was talking about. You get the church painted. Child paints the church, or helps to paint the church, but then the child might want to go and get tutoring from some of the teachers who are also a part of the time bank, because the school is located in the neighborhood, and the teachers might provide tutoring. I was one of the folks that provided tutoring. I get computer support from one of the members of the church who helps me with my computer. And I don't even live in the neighborhood, but I work in the neighborhood. So I just wanted to share some of the things, but these are some of the outcomes that have happened. Violence has been reduced by 20%, which is huge. The largest percentage gone down in the east part of Oakland. The church now provides a food bank. People can provide their time. They can go take their time dollars and purchase food at the time bank. You know, other things. In our food bank, we have also items, things you can, you know, things like Nike shoes, tickets to the movies, you know, because you have all of these businesses who are also providing, putting some time in. We have the Alameda County Public Health Department's system has changed. Now, all of the programs within the Public Health Department implement community capacity building because of the outcome which has happened in this particular neighborhood. Zoning has changed in the city of Oakland because in this particular neighborhood there were industries sitting on top of homes. They were too close. So now the time bank members have organized, go down and speak and advocate for themselves. Youth activities have increased, and this is another good one, and then I'll hush, and that is disaster preparedness. Let me see, we had 200 and some odd folks that were trained in disaster preparedness. These are the members. Going down to the fire department, trained all of us. We all know how to, you know, hold the hose and the whole bit. Those that were trained, once a year we do a mock disaster where we have a 6-point-something earthquake. And now, over the years, we do this every year, so now over the years what we do is we go to each one of the elders' homes and identify what are their needs, what are their medications, where their gas box is located, do they have a wheelchair, what are their issues? So that now the church holds all this information about all of the elders that are in the neighborhood. And so this is just a part of some of the types of exchanges that are happening that are different than what we usually hear happening in some of the time banks. That's the Brandy Park. And the Latinos and the African Americans are close. They're learning Spanish, and the Latinos are learning English. I'm serious. It is really wonderful now, so it's good. Okay.
Actually, I have a couple of questions about problems, and I assume that we might get into that later. But in terms of products, I've understood that in terms of taxation and all these kind of things, that there have been kind of concerns if maybe people are producing things within the time banking economy. Yeah, producing, like making sweaters or making something, because then the value becomes also an issue, and if it should be taxed according to some states' regulations and others.
I don't have that.
But
Yeah,
people have gotten under it mostly, I've understood. But
Yeah, and we, I'll talk a little bit about our store a little bit later, because we have a time bank store, but members make stuff for each other all the time, and they charge based on the amount of time they spend, and there's not really an issue with that. It's but when you get into something like a store or businesses, like a business can't use it in their thing, you can't put a money equivalent on it, and frankly, it is a bit of a gray area with goods and time banking, and my personal perspective is time banking accomplishes so many essential things that government should be doing that I am all for fighting for protection for it, and would, you know, and aim to do that in the future. But at this point, we make clear what we're doing. Our local government knows we have 501c3 status with the IRS. We file that we have a store that brings in donated goods, but we don't put a money equivalent, and we just price things based on how much time in your life it feels fair to put toward getting something. Sure. So at our store, it's all donated goods, and you can get 4 clothing items for a time bank hour. You can get 4 toiletries for an hour. You can get a computer for 10 to 30 hours, depending on how old or new it is. But it's just about the amount of time that feels fair, and it's going toward building community and giving people access to things they need that they aren't being provided with through various other channels in the government or in the market economy. And I think that's something totally worth fighting for in time banking, and it is a gray area at this point. But I think it's time for us to take what we're doing around the world and the beauty of it and the value of it, and start pushing for some policies for some real recognition and some facilitation by it.
I wanted to add one thing to my little 10 minutes that I had, or 15, is that when the residents advocate for whatever, whether it's the zoning change, policy change, or whatever, the wonderful thing about the public health department being in partnership with them, they can provide the data. They can provide the data. So, and you know, so that you know that there's something coming back. Yeah.
So what I'd like to, I'm really visual, so it would be helpful for me to see, like, what I'm getting is that you came in as a public health person, and
I
so
am a public health person.
Okay, so you had a position, and you had
a
paid position, and then you created the activization of this.
Yeah, I did the community organizing first.
Okay, so.
And then I created the time bank.
Okay, so for me, I do really well with lines drawn.
You want me to draw it?
But
I can
what
draw
I'm seeing is that what I'm getting a sense of is that in different communities, it would look differently because, and that's the thing I would probably put up as a core value, is that you're actually meeting the uniqueness of each community.
Yeah, that's true.
Because I think that what's both sort of hard to grasp from it, but that's also easy. What's hard to grasp is that each is unique, but what's easy is the system itself.
That's right.
Okay, so what I'm trying to get a visual on, when I first thought of this, I thought of it as one sort of overlying time bank that coordinated everything in a community, and now what I'm seeing is that actually you can have many time banks in one community. But I'm wondering if do you have a coordinator who coordinates all the time banks, or that trains everyone? Like, I want to understand some of the sort of undergirding structures too. So whenever that emerges in this particular time.
Yeah, and I think we do all kind of do it differently. Since Sobrani Park is on right now, I did the training, the Sobrani Park, well, originally it was Chris and Edgar that came and trained us, you know, so that we could think about how we were going to do this. Public Health Department and all those groups that I talked about. And then once I learned what time banking was, then I trained the residents, the members.
So if there's
And I hired a Latino and an African American who share the same office to run the time bank. They're part-time coordinators. And so they can then outreach. They had 16 hours of leadership development training from me also, so that they know how to organize, you know, campaign, identify issues,
Right.
you know, and the whole bit,
So
as
that-
well
that
as the
whole
time
set
bank.
of skills, et cetera, is something that comes from the leadership of the time bank, people into each community,
Well, everybody
Is that
has
what
something
happens?
to give. And so it's about
in terms of
identifying.
starting it. In terms of starting and implementing the time banks. Like I live in Portland, Oregon, I know there's a time bank there.
Right.
So, but if I want a time bank at the organization I work for, then what would I do?
Yeah.
I guess that's what I'm asking,
Yeah.
you know,
How do
so.
you start as a
I know I've
coordinator?
totally interrupted your trip
No, no,
here,
it's
but
okay.
we can get that later, but.
So you don't have to start a whole big organization. You can start a time bank in the organization that you're in, and one thing that you can do is you can get a startup kit from Time Banks USA. I think it costs, what, $65 now? And then you get access to the web-based software for 6 months, and what you would do is tell other people about it and get people excited about it, and people would go ahead and join and sign up. It's always important to have a champion, someone who helps facilitate it. And then
Somebody
that's
has to
just,
take it
it's
on.
essential. That person can be paid or not paid. There are member-led time banks, but there are resources that have to go in to time banking. Part of the fundamental aspect of time banking for me is that it includes people who aren't normally included. So I don't want a system that you have to understand. You have to know to go on the computer and
Yeah.
be self-motivated and have all the social skills to reach out to someone you don't know. We have a lot of members who do that. The vast majority of our members self-facilitate. They figure out what they need. They figure out what they're doing. They make the exchange, and we don't get involved at all. They record it all. But then we have a lot of members who can't do that or don't want to do that for one reason or another, and that's when active facilitation is really important. So like someone who's homebound or very shy or doesn't have computer skills or not literate could call me and say, here's what I need, and I give them some phone numbers of other members, or I would call another member or send an email and see if they can help out, and I would help link them. But then they can help develop their, you know, once people start doing some exchanges, they get to know each other and they can do it on their own, so it helps build independence. If we do a thing in Dane County where if there's a member who doesn't have computer access or understand how to use a computer, we'll hook them up with an online buddy who's another time bank member, and we pay the buddy time bank hours to help the non-computer using member. But that way we create another relationship, we create another incentive for people to focus on the time bank and what they want to do. So the active facilitation is one of the things that I think has helped time banking be resilient, especially as compared to other complementary currencies, because we can pull in people, as I mentioned earlier, like people join for all kinds of reasons. They don't have to understand it. They don't have to be philosophically in agreement with it or anything like that. People join because they need a ride to the doctor, and then all of a sudden they're like, oh, and I can do this, and here's what I can give to other people, and suddenly understand, no, you can be part of an equal economy. So
You'll also talk about how you get the word out.
yeah. Yeah, we have, so I want to mention this. I know some people are going to probably have to leave before this is done, but we're going to host a 2-day training in Lathrop Village, and you can get a lot of nuts and bolts stuff. There's a fee for the training. It's pretty reasonable. You can apply for a scholarship, especially if you're working on starting a time bank, because we want people to know how to do this. But it's happening the next 2 days, all day Saturday and Sunday, and we'll teach you how to do some of the nuts and bolts. And after we hear about a couple other models in here, we're going to do an exercise. It'll be better for someone who learns visually, because we're going to do an exercise where we identify a goal or dream for a community and then figure out who the partners would be and simulate how we do it. And it just helps expand your brain and get you understanding, like, more intuitively how it works. So we'll start that pretty soon. But we can talk more about all different models because it doesn't have to be hard. Our time bank is ambitious. We passed around the Dane County Time Bank overview so you can see some of the structures we've developed to really get our members to run the thing. That's for a big complicated time bank with lots of projects and programs, and you can start a small neighborhood time bank with very little input and really get people going on it.
You can start a time bank just in the school. Like I said, the Sobrani Park Time Bank is just within that neighborhood, but also within that neighborhood, there's a time bank within the school, there's a time bank within the church, there's, you know, little sub-time banks within the same neighborhood.
Yeah, so actually I want to address that because it sounded like one of your questions about if it would be separate time banks or one time bank, and people can do it differently. And originally we knew that we had a lot of different goals in our time banks and different communities that we wanted to reach, and we thought we would have separate ones that would be connected sort of under an umbrella. But once it started happening, we just realized it made sense for everyone to be part of the same one, because some of the skills that people offer are more scarce, like graphic design is a good example. And if what you need is graphic design, chances are you don't have to be right in the same neighborhood as someone. They can do something and email it to you or something like that. So we just realized we'll have a broader set of skills if we keep everyone in the same time bank, but you can search by, in the software you can sort by neighborhood. So people usually go to write in their neighborhood for most of what they need, but they have access to the other people. But you can also have it in separate time banks and then work out ways to connect them.
And what I was saying, they have separate time banks because in this particular neighborhood, as small as it is, there was lack of trust. So they all belong to the same time bank, because the church, where the computer is that holds the data, receives the data from all of these particular little time banks. But they, like say, within the elementary school, the kids are exchanging amongst themselves. They're not participating over here with this middle school. They're doing a little time bank. Sometimes when there's a big community event, they're all participating, they're all exchanging. So that's just the way in which we've had to slowly but surely grow to where we are today, where it's all involved. But at first, we did kind of start like that, and I like sharing that because sometimes that goes on in neighborhoods. How do you get, who was talking about, you were talking about, who was talking about where the community, somebody mentioned where the community, they have community, I think it was you, but you have all of these like little silos and groups. And so, you know, maybe at first they're not going to be ready to jump right in there and become a part of this and that. So you might want to start your time bank and then have them just exchange amongst themselves. And before you know it, they're going to need something that's over here, right? And so that's all I was just sharing.
And part of the real value of it is building trust, and
Right.
that's a goal, is building trust, but we're starting at a place where people don't tend to trust each other, so
That's right.
it is important to respect that and take that into account. And we had an elementary school who really wanted to just have people in the school, but they still joined the time bank
Yeah,
overall,
right.
but they just would work with people in the school. But again, then pretty quickly, you know, that circle grows and grows, because then the person you know in the school knows somebody outside the school, so you feel like you know them, and then it just goes outward from there.
Would there be limitations to a really big one in terms of, like, say a city had access to a database, not, well, people in the city all have access to one, but they still function and they're separate kind of, you know, compartments. Do you see, have there been obstacles to the size, you know, maybe bureaucracy or any kind of?
Not yet for us. We're one of the biggest ones,
Right.
so with about 1,600 members, and I just feel like everyone in the county could be a member and it'd work great. Not so far, and we run into issues with capacity. There are a lot of demands on us, like now that people know about the time bank, it's just sometimes hard to keep up because a lot of people want to do a lot of different things. But the more members you have, the more people you have to pull from to be leaders in it. So that's one of our strategies for being sustainable, is teaching, bringing in, developing more leadership in the time bank itself. So, and as a big time, I do want to mention this as another strategy. And Lori will talk about a specific project we do, but within the time bank, since it's county-wide, we still want it to have a neighborhood feel in each neighborhood, and make sure each neighborhood is really functional. So we have a group called a kitchen cabinet in each neighborhood where there's enough leadership. And so they're the leaders in their neighborhood, and they're responsible for seeing who's not there, who needs to be, identifying outreach, holding member events to bring people together. That's really key. The more often you bring people together in the same room for a fun event, the better your time bank's going to go.
Like what?
They do that.
Like what?
So some of the best, go on.
No, go on.
Some of the best ones that we've had, there's a pet parade that we do every year at one of the farmers markets, and we always invite the people who do pet care to come and let the people with pets know who they are. We do back to school day also at the farmers market, and we'll get school supplies donated, and we have the tutors come and kids who need tutoring. So we try to have each thing sort of geared toward future exchanges as much as we can. And Arts and Crafts Night was a really successful one. So we had artists, we did a number of things, but artists brought their art and sold some of it at a silent auction for dollars as a fundraiser for the time bank, sold some of it for time bank hours based on how much time they had spent creating the art. We had tables where people would do a workshop, a little craft workshop and do crafts with people, and everyone loved it. So anything like that shows up, but meals, anything that shows off people's talents. Our kickoff event was a big meal, and so we paid, I think, $20 for ingredients, and then paid time dollars for people to cook. They made a huge meal. We had 80 people show up, and nothing brings people together like free food. At this point, we get a chunk of money from the county Department of Human Services developmental disabilities budget, because they see us as being a really good resource for people with developmental disabilities who aren't getting access to the services they need. But we wrote into our proposal that we don't segregate people and we don't define people that way. So anyone we hire with their money is going to work with all of our members. So we make sure to keep our mission straight. Which anyone who's worked in this world probably knows that the money can really push you in different directions than you want to go, and that's why we really focus on keeping the core values in mind all the time. We have a grant from the state to work on juvenile justice issues and disproportionate minority contact issues. The organizations who join pay a fee for membership. Some time banks have an individual membership fee, but we don't. You can do fundraisers, micro enterprise, and stuff like that. I think there are time banks here without a paid coordinator, aren't there? Yep. And so you volunteer your time to help coordinate, and do you enlist other people to help you?
I have a kitchen cabinet.
Great.
And then we have a membership fee, so that does
The beauty is you're creating a way to pay people to do the work too with the time bank hours, but you need to build up the time bank in order for that to really have the value.
She has a question here.
Yeah, and I came in late, so I don't know if it was addressed. And I don't mean to be like skeptical or something, but have you been under any attack? Has anyone tried to shut you down? No, right? It's the community. No. So no one. Everyone support. Once they find out about it, a lot of support, a lot of building up in the community.
We've had no problem.
And I'm really impressed that you're working with the county as well.
Yeah, that's the co-production piece. Is that the county receives and gives, and so do the residents give and receive from the county.
And there's, no anticipation.
The city is part of it.
No anticipation of any problems with growing your organization and getting more people involved. I mean, there's always challenges with growth. It looks like you're trying to also stay small within the community, so it's not like
we're trying to stay small. I think
we're trying to get big.
Yeah, I want to think big. Like, I think it would be really great. I mean, I'm hearing your structure and your model, and I'm going, well, that model seems like it could really be applied to pretty much the entire world, where you could really be buying a beautiful piece of art made somewhere else out of, and really looking to restructure the world. And I'm just hanging out with other people, and they're really worried about whatever, the empire or whatever, coming down on them. And so I wanted to really know if it doesn't seem like you're worried about that. You seem like you got the community grassroots support, and that's
And our community
awesome.
will grow. We're just trying to really get grounded in this community first before they will branch out to other churches. See, the church could then, grow out and, the schools, the teachers, they live in other neighborhoods. I mean, so it can grow. But right now, we're just comfortable where we are with 200 some odd members, because there are only 800 homes in this neighborhood.
About in Michigan right now, we're forming a Michigan Alliance of Time Banks, actually. So there's all these different time banks that are sprouting up kind of everywhere, mostly in Southeast Michigan, but they're actually forming a whole Michigan Alliance to kind of, actually they're going to have an institute to like train and build more programs. If you're thinking big.
Yeah, I'm thinking small and big, and everyone between.
I just wanted to say one more thing to that, and then I'll call on the other people. Since you're getting political, I do have, there's a certain amount of economic understanding that I think is really important for people to gain. I think time banking is a way to help people get that at wherever level they're at, by understanding experientially how things are and how things can be. And I do believe that the way our system is structured right now, our monetary system with money and power, it's a very small group of people maintaining power over everybody else because they're controlling the means of exchange. And once people understand how that works and how imaginary it is, and how much we're allowing our lives to be controlled by this imaginary thing, then they're going to lose something, and they have a lot to lose. So I'm worried in that way. I'm worried about IRS or I'm worried about getting messed with in different ways because it is such a powerful tool, and it has a lot of potential to get people to, I kind of view us as like the little sprouts under the concrete, and at some point, and I like that image myself, but there's definitely potential for that, but because this is so broad-based and because it's about bringing people together and seeing the power that we have and can have and seeing the value of it and the benevolence of it, I think that we have a lot of power to really fight that, or really just not allow it to happen and not even use the word fight. I kind of think of it as peaceful evolution.
Yeah, just not giving any power to that anymore.
Do our own. We do it ourselves. It's I think of it as a social safety net we provide for each other. So.
I think that it's really a transformation of the concept of community organizing.
Yeah.
Because we've lost a lot of community organizing work through, starting even with the change of the VISTA program in the 80s. And so I think that it has a different label on it, and it fits well in terms of, societal expectations or whatever, and I think it's so basic that people understand it, but it's subversive in that it's organic within communities, and it works through community organizing with people. And so I just really want to say that, because I think we've lost so many. We don't rally anymore, we don't march anymore, we don't do a lot of things that people have done, that I've done, other people have done, and this is a great resurgence of one aspect of what we need in our culture.
I was wondering about liability. How do you handle that? Well, say a kid gets hurt with a tricycle accident when somebody was watching their child. How do you handle something like that?
We, in a lot of time banks, get volunteer liability insurance, and that covers the people working on it. Costs $2 a person, and you actually only need to cover the maximum number of people who might be doing exchanges at any given time. So that's what we do, and we also are attempting to have a culture that's more community-based and trust-based, where we don't run off and sue each other because we get hurt on their property. But we have insurance also.
We do too. We have the same insurance.
Is there a problem with the reciprocity? In other words, people that have big balances of time dollars, that they're not, debts.
We are really, really loose about it in our time bank. We have guidelines, but frankly, we don't go look at everybody's balance all the time. We can notice sometimes if someone's spending and spending and spending and never giving back, and what we do is give them a call and just help them find ways to give back. If that's happening because they need a lot more help than they're able to provide, that's fine. And no one minds helping them. And no one feels like, oh, if you don't get out of your bed and go, no one. So we haven't had a problem with it. And I have come to think that it's more valuable to really encourage people to use time bank hours whenever they need something, especially organizations that are providing a lot of free service in the community. I think that they do a service by paying time bank hours or time dollars for everything they need to have done. If the work is interesting and valuable enough for people to come do it for you, it's worth you being able to spend those time bank hours, and it helps get them engaged and helps encourage and facilitate them to do one-on-one exchanges later. So that's our model, and it's a model of some time banks. Some time banks require more direct reciprocity. You need to earn the hours before you spend them. But time banks tend to be, and I think ought to be, governed by the people who are participating in the time bank. So time banks will set their own policies based on what they're comfortable with, and they often change over time. I mean, it's like a stab in the dark when you're first starting, because you don't know what it's going to look like or who's going to participate. That's one of the challenges and one of the beauties of starting a time bank, is it's not, you can't decide what it's going to be like. That's your community that decides that.
Do you have any time banking things going on in New Mexico?
There's one in Albuquerque. And where else? There's Josefina in New Mexico. Other time banks in
Josefina's in New Mexico.
Oh no, it wasn't Albuquerque. It was Cruces. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
I'll need to get that information from you.
Yeah, and everybody, there are a lot of time bank people here, so we can give you information about who's in your area or ways that you can connect in the future. So I want to give Lori, I want to go on to Lori and Lisa's stories after I take one more from you and then Matt. Did you have a question? Okay.
Do you have any issues with people of questionable backgrounds becoming members and gaining access to places that they might?
So we do, so she was asking about people with questionable backgrounds. We do a basic background check. A lot of time banks do, but we don't exclude people because they have a criminal history, unless it's first or second degree sexual assault of a child. And that's what our safety committee determined. In our safety committee, we made sure that we had people who were returned prisoners, people who work with Madison Urban Ministry, who works with people in the criminal justice system, and we had people from the Sheriff's Department and Department of Corrections, and we had a mental health person. We developed the policy together, and we developed some levels of restriction based on different types of offenses. So you might say, you can be a member, but you don't have access to the rest of the member database. You go through a coordinator. We might say, for really serious things, group supervised activities only. For less serious things, there's in the software you can put a guardian angel feature on, so you can read you can see what people are doing over the time bank. And we do that for kids, actually, as a matter of routine for anyone under 18. But different people set different standards. I personally think it's really important to not create another economy that excludes people.
That's right.
So that's a perfect segue to go on to Lori's part. So I want to make sure that we get everyone a chance to talk about their model, and I'm sure more questions will arise. And it's hard to have a 4.5-hour workshop because it's really long, but that's the beauty of it, is we can get to everything.
So I'll be pretty quick. So I work with Stephanie at the Dane County Time Bank, and I'll talk a little bit about our youth court program. The time bank itself was started first, and then we started this youth court program. Basically, there was a neighborhood police officer who was having problems with kids in his neighborhood and wanted something different besides just writing a kid a ticket and sending them to court and funneling them into the juvenile justice system. And so we started this youth court program based on Washington, D.C.'s youth court model. And it's basically where we recruit kids to serve on a jury. They hear a summary of the incident that brought the youth to the youth court. They develop questions, they question the youth, they question their parents, and then they come to consensus on a sentence, which has components that address any harm that was created, helps to restore any relationships that might have been damaged, and then also kind of plays to their strengths and gets them involved in something that they may want to continue being involved with at the end. And the way that it has been working is an officer will write a ticket for a youth who commits a municipal ordinance violation. Our largest thing is for disorderly conducts, lots and lots of fights, some underage drinking, some marijuana stuff, retail theft, graffiti, different stuff like that. So an officer will catch a kid doing something and will write this ticket, but can offer them the opportunity to come to youth court. And if it's voluntary. If they decide they want to come, the officer will then hold the ticket outside of the system so it does not get processed. The youth will come to court. They'll have their court date, and then they'll have 90 days to finish whatever the other youth say that they have to do. If they finish successfully, the ticket doesn't move forward, nothing gets on their juvenile record, and that's pretty much the end of it. We communicate with the police department, and that's it. If they don't finish successfully, previously it was the ticket would just go through and it would be like they were never even referred. So it's a good opportunity for youth to learn from their mistakes rather than being put through this system. And it works really, really well with time banking because all of the people that are involved, the kids on the jury, there's a lot of adults that help facilitate the court session, help to make phone calls to call the kids and say, we're having youth court, can you make it, things like that. And then we also use time bank members to do a lot of the sentencing components. There's a lot of people in the community that have worked with juveniles and have a lot of skills to share with them. There's people do tutoring and mentoring and teach different kinds of classes like Know Your Rights or Nonviolent Conflict Resolution. Lots of people, we're pretty flexible. There's been people that have said, I used to be a teacher and I really want to do a discussion group with youth and talk about teen issues. Give them a space where they can talk about some of the stuff that's going on. There's not a lot of that. So we have time bank members contribute in that way. We also have organizations that get involved. We have an organization, for example, it's called Hancock Center for Dance Movement Therapy. So there's been kids that they say they have anger problems, but they've gone through like traditional anger management or different types of classes like that, and it just doesn't work. Some things work for some people, some things don't. It's just the structure. And so they've gotten sent, so Hancock Center for Dance and Movement Therapy offers these movement classes to address issues in that way. So it works really well also because the kids that are going through, the kids that are being referred, with part of their sentence being directly linked with the time bank, if they're doing something that they enjoy doing, they have the opportunity to continue doing that and establish longer term relationships through joining the time bank. A lot of kids, a handful of kids that go through will stay involved. Either they'll want to continue with their mentor, or they will want to serve on the jury, or they'll want to continue, doing something that they were already doing, and then they just become a member and start earning and doing that. The jurors have earned lots of hours. They have gotten things like, early on there was a juror that got a gardening plot and learned how to garden. People have gotten bus passes for their family and themselves. They've gotten computers. They have access to all different kinds of things. So that's it in a nutshell. We started in late 2006 in one specific neighborhood. And then we've expanded to two. We have 2 community-based locations for incidents that are happening within the communities, and then we have 1 school-based court that is for youth that are committing offenses in the schools. In Madison, there's police officers in all the schools, and probably 1/5 of the tickets that they issue to kids are coming directly from the schools. We have a big problem in Madison with the school-to-prison pipeline kind of things. And inside the schools, inside one particular school, La Follette High School it's called, we've been able to see some really strong results. We started in that location in late 2008. This past school year was the first full school year that we were there. And there are over 50 kids that are serving as jury members throughout. Some of them are individual time bank members and they're earning time bank hours themselves. Some of them are earning on behalf of La Follette High School, who's an organizational member. And through that, La Follette High School is earning hours, and then they're able to bring in additional resources from within the time bank inside the school. They're looking for math tutors. We brought a woman who has many, many years of experience working with youth and changing behavior and re-looking at behavior and things like that. She came in and did a workshop. So that is all really good. We've drastically reduced the number of tickets coming out of La Follette High School. The previous year there was, I think it was 154 tickets written on the same street as the high school was. There's 125 of those tickets were written actually inside the high school from the police officer at the school. And then this past year while we were there, the number of tickets on Plum Road, that road dropped from 154 down to 37. And within the school, it went from 125 tickets within the school down to like 26
and
tickets.
22 were for habitual truancy, which we can't take.
Yeah, so 4. We missed 4.
We missed 4.
So we've had like 187 kids total come through and have had the opportunity to be a part of it and avoid juvenile, something on their juvenile record. That we've had like 60 something sessions. There's over 70 time bank members that are involved in contributing in some way. We've had over like 1,200 or so time bank hours exchanged by doing this kind of stuff. So, yes, go ahead.
Lori, is there any opposition from juvenile gangs or clubs competing for authority or power against these straight
We specifically, when we're recruiting for youth to be involved, we don't want that. We don't want all good kids judging the bad kids. We want a mix of, we want them to be their peers. Many of our jurors that are some of our very, very best thoughtful jurors are kids that have gotten into plenty of trouble on their own. And they're leaders in their own way. They are leaders. And so we try to get them hooked in with us so they're doing something positive. And yeah, so there's a huge mix of people. There's jurors that want to be lawyers, want to get involved in criminal justice. There are jurors that just are there because they want to do something and help with the school. They're student council kind of kids. There's kids that are sentenced to serve on the jury. There are kids that have gone through as respondents and come back to serve on the jury. And then there are kids that just have been kind of on the fence, and could go either way. We specifically target recruiting those kids to try to get them hooked in so that we can just see them monthly and they can start forming longer term relationships with positive people.
Just to follow up, so there's been no repercussion from the students against the jury, in a backlash way because of the sentence to a child at juvenile. He gets his buddies together and they go after the kids in the jury. That kind of.
We have not experienced that at all. Stephanie, did you want to say something about
Lori,
that?
I've had over 10 years in D.C. We have not had a single instance of retaliation, and the gangs have decided, without our intervention, that the youth court was neutral territory. So kids on different gangs will sit on the same jury, and by their they must have given the orders that the kids would wear long sleeves, cover their colors, color their tattoos. And if a kid is doing jury duty, community service, and comes into gang territory, if he or she tells them that they're doing it as a jury, as part of their sentence, they leave the kid alone. And the gangs decided that. We obviously didn't.
And we just had a meeting at La Follette, the school that we're in, and I was so happy to hear, because all the kids sign an oath of confidentiality too, and it was great because the teachers and the people who help us out said they've never heard a word from the jurors outside of it, and that's what I've heard. We looked into a lot of other youth courts when we were starting ours, and I heard that pretty consistently, that the kids take it really seriously and they have respect for the process. And this ties back in what I said earlier about building the community capacity so we can offer to take the load off the institutions. And this is a way that we've done it here. And our whole youth court started, we're attempting to start it in a different school at first, and it was moving like molasses with the administration. They said they supported it, but it was really hard to get anywhere. So we started it in the little neighborhood with the police officer who wanted to do it, and we decided to ask for forgiveness rather than permission. Then we could show how it was working. And actually the one assistant principal who was really hating it at the first school we were trying moved over to the school we're in now, and now he loves it because he's there and he sees the results. But part of it's creating a culture of accountability where the students feel accountable to each other. Part of what happens at a lot of the youth courts is the kids will talk about how they're impacted by the disruption of their class. So all of a sudden it's not cool because everyone gathered around. All of a sudden you feel a little embarrassed that that your peers are telling you, well, I would have liked to learn this day, or stuff like that. So it creates that culture of accountability and the community capacity. And then a really cool result that I'm very excited about now is our police department just created a new type of referral. So our referrals are not backed by a ticket anymore. It's not a ticket at all. It's a restorative justice referral that just comes to youth court or a restorative justice circle. And that way, we were a little concerned about our model possibly widening the net. You can come on in and sit down if you like. Because we didn't want, a lot of the police, I have another point I want to make about this because I think it's really important, but a lot of the police know that what they do traditionally doesn't work, and they don't like it. They're human beings. They care about the same things we care about, and so a lot of them are really excited to have this as an option. We were really worried, though, that the police who were excited to have this as an option, who would have chosen not to write a ticket because they didn't want the destructive thing, would write a ticket because they see something more positive that the kid could do, but then if the kid didn't follow through, they'd get a ticket. So we were a little worried about feeding kids into the system that way, although it hadn't really been happening that way. We were concerned that as we expanded, we would lose the connection with the individual officers and we would potentially widen the net. So this is a really cool thing for us, that now we can take whatever kids they think can benefit from it and we don't have to worry about accidentally feeding them into the system. So the police are kind of viewing it as like a friendly warning. Next time, if you don't follow through with this, next time you get in trouble, you're more likely to get a ticket that time, but it's not backed up by a ticket. And that only happens because we showed we could develop the community capacity to take the load off, bring it, and a lot of this I really see is so much of the decimation of our communities has happened is things are more scarce for people. People have to work tons of jobs to make ends meet. Things move into institutions and move into the market economy, and this is a way we can pull things back out of institutions and into the neighborhoods where they belong, take care of each other.
It's just more effective in working with kids. I mean, and another good thing about it, another thing besides all those things that Stephanie just said, is it's helping to shift the relationship between kids and families and the police. There's in some of the schools and some of the neighborhoods, people hate the police. It's like, oh, here come the police. And so this is a way too for that relationship to change, for the youth and their family to see that, wow, this officer wants me to succeed and is going to do something different for me rather than, just bust me.
And also in terms of principles of nonviolent organizing, and one thing that I feel really good about is we have a lot of really excellent police in Madison, and we have police who like to bust heads. And there's a conflict in the police department between different styles of policing at times, and it feels very good to have something where we bring together and work with the police who really want to do policing because they care about outcomes, about the safety of their neighborhood. And that's, I'm gonna venture to say it's more than half of the police and probably the majority of the police. But working with the police to create, it's another aspect of co-production where we're creating a structure that they can feel good about. It feels like a very important aspect of the type of work that time banking is all about, is find the commonality among different groups of people and start from there. Lisa, are you ready to talk about your program?
I'll stand up just for a minute. I've been sitting so long. In Rhode Island, I'm going to talk about two nucleuses. One is our existing, we started on our organization was already a statewide family-run advocacy organization. So we were families, helping families. We work with families who are at risk or who have children with emotional, behavioral, mental health challenges, and we take that term at risk very broadly. So we're very broad, inclusive, and in today's world, everybody's pretty much at risk. And when we also look at the language of mental health, we're not just looking at it from a deficit of mental illness, but promoting positive mental health, even looking at it from a public health model approach. Really, how do you bring social, emotional well-being to everybody? So we think very broad, inclusive. We're not at a very deficit mental illness model. Now, I was asked for a few minutes. I think a lot has been shared about all the different approaches you can take to time banking, and we're starting to do that in Rhode Island. Rhode Island is a very small state, 45 miles any direction, you're across our own state. So when we took this on as a statewide family advocacy organization, we said, let's build the Rhode Island Time Bank Initiative. So we took on the whole state. We also didn't focus just on our mission, though I've just shared a very inclusive mission. We wanted the Time Bank mission to be that it is open to everybody, anybody, individual, to agencies, to groups, to, again, wanting a collective nucleus, because I've been asked to talk about system and system change and the advocacy component around that. So we have two nucleuses. One is the big Rhode Island Time Bank nucleus, and that's growing out of our organization because we're birthing it, but we hope that's going to become even larger and bigger than our organization, and already has over 240 members, and I would say 40 to 60% of those members, and that was in the year that we got to there, 40 to 60% of those members are reflective of our Parent Support Network mission population. The rest are very broader and much more inclusive. Just to hit on a few different things in our model of who we are as an organization, because it helps understand the system change work we're doing. We are a staff of 14. Everybody has taken on a role and responsibility to the time banks, both the Parent Support Network structure piece and the broader Rhode Island Time Bank Initiative. We have 2 full-time time bank coordinators, one that is specifically focused on helping us at the broad picture of the full Rhode Island Time Bank Initiative and special projects that we have going on that relate to our mission population and our advocacy change. And she's also doing a lot of the leadership around community relations. We have just hired another second full-time Time Banks coordinator who also helps support the overall coordination, but is also taking on specific special projects across the lifespan. We have built relationships in our first year to really look at how we can partner with our state agencies. So we actually have contractual relationship with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, which in the state of Rhode Island, that houses child welfare, children's behavioral health, and juvenile justice. So we actually have direct dollars that we receive to do the work and build our time banks in relationship to the work. We also have a contract now with the Department of Children, Youth, and Families where we were able to receive what's called a lifespan respite grant. So we're working on how do we give relief to caregivers across the lifespan. So that could be a child with special, any kind of special needs, to behavioral health, foster adoptive, parents raising children, to adults with developmental disabilities, to elders. So we're really thinking across the lifespan and how do we build more access to respite for all caregivers. And that person's taken on a large part of that role in that coordination, and we're building a whole volunteer respite pool through our time bank across the lifespan. Our paid model of the 14 staff, 6 of them are what are called family leadership coordinators. And a family leadership coordinator does 3 things, which helps you understand this to the system change or advocacy. One, we provide a lot of direct one-on-one support with families who are in need. So we're helping them to navigate all the child service systems and how they interact and how to be empowered and be the front driver for their child and family and making decisions and feeling like they are guiding the process. So that's one part of the role. The second part of the role, and again, we're all families, so we all live these direct experiences and share our direct experiences, which is very empowering for the families. Our second role is part of their title, Family Leadership Coordinator, is to really be helping to cultivate leadership development. So starting small community groups with the families and the youth, helping them to organize, letting them take on active roles to create support groups with each other, leadership networks, taking on special projects that they want to come around together in within their communities. And then the third part of their role is to really help engage families to really become time bank members and to get involved in the time banks, and to also help the families and the youth feel and develop the leadership roles they need to sit on policy and decision-making boards. So we actually work with the state agencies, local communities, coalitions, formal local and state advisory boards on how do we build the leadership skills of the families and youth that we're working with, so that, and help them to be recruited and placed on local and advisory, state and local advisory boards. So some to even that are governor appointed positions. So within that work, we also learned that there needs to be some reciprocity in that. Families will go and youth will go and sit on different boards that feel relevant to their need or where they want to make change. And as they go and they sit on these different policy and decision-making boards, they also earn time dollars. So they can use those time dollars in exchange in the time bank network, and then they're also helping to promote system change. And many times, and I've had the direct experience of being the lone family member on an advisory board, or the only one that has been directly impacted by the challenge or the concern that we're talking about. So our goal and our push is always to have at least 51% representative of the population or the topic that's being discussed be sitting in that advisory or policy board discussion. And so we're using time banking as a tool to push that agenda and to have everybody present there. And the leadership development is I need to have more knowledge and tools around that topic so that I can drive the decision change.
Have you ever had anybody after the meeting say, I need my lawnmower?
Yes, yes. We're just getting there, but that's starting to happen. But it's real, and it is starting to happen. And I think we're starting to get some of our both agency partners from a state level to a local level. We have child welfare workers where it used to be where families were calling us at the individual level saying, I can't even communicate with my child welfare worker. They just want to keep my child away from me. They don't want to work with me at all. To now some of these families are sitting in partnership on committees with child welfare workers, and we're bridging those relationships. So that it is promoting change. Change happens slow. It doesn't happen fast. We've created coalitions. So one of our coalitions is called the Youth at Risk Coalition. We've started to do a lot of truancy. What the coalition said is, let's do truancy prevention. So now we're starting special time bank projects. Youth Court is the one. We are just creating Youth Court now too. And we've been able to bring in key leaders and learn from the youth courts that are going on for time banking. And we're just getting that going. We're engaging in all the schools. The paid peer mentors that we have now are training up volunteer peer mentors who are now paid by time dollars and doing that work together. Because the other thing we believe in as family members is we don't always need a formal service. People are quick to say, you need counseling, or you need this formal service or that, and then that's third-party reimbursement and insurance and all this stuff. And then I ask you, when you get into a crisis, where do you reach out first? Is it to a formal service, or is it to a friend, a family member, your church? So why do we jump so quickly to formal services? So the time banking that we're building too for our state of Rhode Island is that as families, we can utilize each other. We can support each other formally to building natural supports, and that's what we're really trying to build, that network. So back to being parent support network, trying to further our mission, is we don't always, yes, we do need formal services, and having had a son with major mental health challenges that's been in and out of hospitalization for long levels, at risk of out-of-home care, entering in the justice system, I understand the importance of formal services, but I need a lot more informal and natural supports. And that's what this is about changing. We also have, not only are we trying to build the volunteer lifespan respite through the time banking and having those exchange, we keep saying, what is the system change that we need to do to make that better? Because the reason why we started the volunteer respite pool was also there was very limited formal respite available or paid for in our state. So we had to begin form advocacy around that. So we have what's called the Lifespan Respite Coalition. And we're really working together at many levels, both at the level of how do we expand access to respite care in a paid formal way to informal, how do we build the volunteer pool, to how we really raising public awareness and promoting policy change. So you have, a lot of our time banking is a way of really looking at it not only from that neighbor to neighbor and social project change that we're talking about, but then again back to how we talked about the core value of community and respect that gets to that system change. And so I know that once you meet a family at a basic need and you engage them at a basic need level, then they want to give back. That's how I started. I was a wallpaper painter, never thought I would ever get involved in this whole advocacy movement. And I needed something for my son, and there wasn't anyone to provide it. And I had to become the squeaky wheel. He was a special education student. Couldn't even get him to have a special education IEP. Couldn't get anybody to comply with that. I had to learn special education law, to now we have a whole group of people changing special education law for the state.
So what we're going to do now is Cheryl's going to take us through some things to help us envision how we use time banking to realize our dreams. We can view it as how to tackle a certain social problem, but we like to view it as how we can realize the dreams that we have for our community. And she's going to start with all of us together. Then we're going to identify a couple of things we want to work on. And we can either split into a couple of groups or we can stay all together. So it depends on what people identify as their goals and what you guys want to do.
Well, keep talking.
Okay.
I was dancing.
But so we'll do that. If we split up or not, it'll be an exercise. So we will get to experience what it's like to figure out how to use a time bank to accomplish our goals. And then we'll need one person for each group. It'll either be one or two groups, I think. We'll need one person for each group to draw the stuff as we talk about it. So think about if you want to offer to draw, and then we'll just share what we did and highlights and commonalities. And so we're attempting to expand your brains here in this portion of it. And then also while she's drawing, I'm going to pass these around. This is a brochure for the training that we're leading on Saturday and Sunday. We're going to get really into the nitty-gritty of how you can make this happen here.
How do you know that people aren't going to get pissed because they have an hour and they didn't get something fixed the way they want?
Well, one of the things that we do in our time bank is people sign, when they join, they fill out an application, and one of the things they check off is that they understand that people provide neighborly services and don't guarantee their work. But in the Community Weaver software where people list their offers and requests, we have people be really specific and say what their experience is, including I don't have any experience with this, but I like to do it. And people call on people of all levels of experience. You don't necessarily need someone with a professional level of experience, so it depends on what's appropriate for the job. But each member is responsible for looking into it enough to and communicating enough to make sure that they are assured that they'll get what they need. And then occasionally it doesn't happen and we work it out like neighbors. If people need me as the coordinator to step in, I will, but that's only happened once in our time bank. And what happened is someone spent 6 hours trying to fix someone else's computer and he wasn't able to fix it. And she was upset and didn't want to give the $6 time dollars, and so she ended up bringing me in and we talked it through. And she was like, well, what if I said I was going to babysit and I left halfway through? And I said, well, that's different. That's something that you would control and that would be your choice and you'd be putting someone in a dangerous situation. But this man gave 6 hours of his life, which I'm sure were very frustrating, and it was only to fix your computer. It was beyond his control. And she ended up paying the $6 time dollars and feeling okay about it. So we just, we deal with it like as neighbors as much as possible. Morris, what did you want to say?
Another copy of what you just handed out, not for me,
we ran out.
for someone from Detroit.
Yeah, I didn't I'm going to look around because I should have more copies, but that was all I had on me, so I'm going to find some more. It's about the training the next 2 days, so.
I was going to ask, are there feedback structures in place at all, like where people can kind of bring
Like
experience or
rate
something?
people?
There's not, on our software that we use, we don't have any kind of rating system, and that was actually a deliberate choice. When I first saw the software in its beta at an early stage, they were putting that in, but members felt like it was too much like eBay and too subjective, and so we made a policy in our time bank that if we get 3 complaints about one member, then we would take action. We would contact the member and maybe put a note on there and get them to take down the service that isn't working, but we haven't had that yet. And I'm going to stress, we have more than 1,600 members who have exchanged more than 60,000 hours of service. So it does help build trust and understanding. And it's not, and one of our early members had someone come put in a sink, and she called me and she's like, it was crooked, and at first I felt a little bit, it was just a little bit crooked, but she's like, at first I felt really bummed out about that, but then I realized I paid a plumber like a few weeks before, paid a lot of money and had a problem with that service too, so she felt okay about it. We don't expect perfection all the time, but
we don't need any more of these, I don't think. People just handed them out.
Oh, okay, thanks.
I wanted to say, how do you make decisions in your group? Do you do consensus?
We have a board of directors that's responsible for the organization, the big picture stuff, but then we have kitchen cabinets in the neighborhoods, and they do the day-to-day. Well, our first kitchen cabinet made the member policies. So we started in one neighborhood, and they made all the policies that apply across the time bank. But the kitchen cabinets would be the ones to revisit those policies and discuss them, and those are made up of active time bank members.
But it means you do majority ruling from...
Oh, we decided to do each kitchen cabinet decides their own decision-making process at the first, but most of ours use 80% decision-making, which is what the board adopted, because it was easier to do than consensus, but kind of achieves a similar goal. I know it's not consensus, but then one person can't block something, but you have to have a supermajority for everything. But we actually almost never use our decision-making processes because people naturally come to consensus and we don't think of it as a process. So it's been really rare for us to take actual votes. Does anybody else want to share their?
Well, can I just ask about how that works then, like for accountability? I guess you're just accountable to your members, and if your members are perfectly fine with no, like if you have a board meeting and someone takes the minutes or whatever to review later, it just goes, we discussed this issue, they brought up this, and we decided this. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't
we just
ever say like, such and such board member voted this way and other members voted.
We don't. I mean, yeah, our minutes just sort of reflect the action that happened, and I don't know if other people have experience they want to share with it. Cheryl, take it away.
Okay, thank you for the time. Too busy doing the electric slide. Got the picture. So this is a real quick picture. In fact, she's not my best girl that I can draw. But anyway, what we're getting ready to do is an activity that was inspired by Paulo Freire. You know, he wrote the book, The Pedagogy of the Oppressed. He was he died a few years ago, but he was a literacy educator and worked with the poor people in Brazil. And what he would do in order to empower the people is that he would draw pictures, various different pictures, depending on what a particular issue was. And that he drew those pictures in order to get the people to began to work on critical consciousness and began to think about root causes to the problems that they were facing in their neighborhoods and in their communities and in their families. So that's what we're going to do right now as a springboard to really working on what we'd like to see changed in our neighborhood, what we'd like to see a positive outcome, the dreams, as Stephanie has put it, in terms of time banking and how you can make it work in your neighborhood. So, what do you see when you look at this picture? What do you see? She's supposed to be a little girl. She got long legs. But I just want to
girl.
Factory.
Yeah, a factory away from the homes.
So you see the factory?
Well, is she walking down a road that cars might go down, maybe?
So you see cars and girl walking.
The girl's smiling.
Why do you see the factory?
Smoke.
You see a smoking factory. And the girl walking, why is she walking?
Going home.
Well, she's pretty little and she's alone.
Yeah, all the cars.
So you see a girl walking alone.
Pretty vulnerable.
You see a vulnerable ability.
Such some strong legs.
Walking, a strong-legged girl walking along. So why do you think that this is happening in this particular neighborhood? What else do you see in this neighborhood?
Everybody's at work.
Yeah, everybody's at work.
Yeah, that's like nobody else.
No other people. There is a tree though.
There's only one tree.
One truck?
What do you see? I heard something about some environment stuff.
There's a tree and there aren't any other people though.
Is the brown dirt? Is she dirty? Is that what you're
You see one
saying?
tree.
You said there's something on her.
Why do you only see one tree, factory, folks working, and a child alone walking down the street?
The other trees got ash disease, died.
Oh.
That's what happened in my neighborhood.
Debbie Down.
Why do you think they died?
They had ash disease.
What is the pollution? Is that the borer, the emerald ash borer? Is that what they got?
So you're saying due to pollution?
A disease.
A disease. Okay, this tree died due to disease. Okay? So just based on some of these particular comments that you've made when you look at this picture, is this something that you may see in your own neighborhood or neighborhoods somewhere nearby your neighborhood? Yes? And why do you think that this currently exists right now in some of our neighborhoods? Why?
Parents are working lots of hours, multiple jobs.
Lack of public
Okay.
transport.
Huh? What? Sprawl? What did I hear?
Lack of transportation, public transportation.
Lack of public transportation?
Lack of affordable daycare.
Lack of affordable what?
Daycare.
Why?
Because the parents are working so many jobs, they're
And
still
why?
not making enough money.
Why are they doing that?
Because they're low-paying jobs.
Low-paying jobs.
And they have to get, yeah.
Why are they low paying in this neighborhood?
That's all there is.
Why?
Only one factory.
Why?
There's only one factory.
Why?
Because they know that they can get people to do the job for very little.
Why?
Because there's so many workers.
Why?
Because people are poor, don't have
And why are they poor and don't have money?
They might have limited education, they might have not had opportunities.
And why is that?
They haven't created,
Huh?
they haven't created them.
Who haven't created what?
They haven't created their own jobs.
Oh, so they, okay, so they're not entrepreneur. And why not?
They weren't taught that way.
Why?
You rely on the system.
And so why has the system not, being a reliable system, why hasn't it made it possible for this group?
Because
Huh?
it benefits the people that manage it.
Yeah.
Because in our system, you can't afford to, and please don't jump on me when I say this, but you
I
can't
can't
afford
hear you,
to.
baby.
In our system as it is, I don't think you would, the system itself cannot afford to educate everybody because there are not enough jobs for everybody. If they educated all of us, you can't satisfy it.
Why is all of this happening now?
Because it benefits.
And why do you think that that structure is in place?
Because it benefits those people who are in power.
And it's been.
And why do you think we have that type of power structure?
because it was developed by the people that it benefits. And you develop whatever your system, you develop it to benefit you. I don't.
Yeah.
Well, we are spending trillions of dollars on wars.
Yeah, there's money if they want it.
Well,
You guys were rolling when you were down here in the educational area. No, but all of these are good answers.
People don't have any other option. It's like once you're stuck in the symbiotic relationship of it, you need to go to school so you can get a job, but you can't go to too much school because you have to go to a job, and you have to get that job so you can get stuff to pay your rent, and then you have kids and you have to send your kids to school, and so you have to go to a job, and you can't pick and choose if you're trying to get food on your table about, well, I'm going to look for another way of doing things because people choose the easiest way of doing things.
So do you see this as social and economic justice kind of issue?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't hear that. Okay.
Well, it's also a lack of social capital.
Yeah.
To talk about it, which I think is basically what you're talking about with the time bank. People have access who aren't born working class or poor, and they have access to family members or people who can bail them out or whatever. It's a very different situation than people who just live day to day.
I saw time as a luxury. You know, you look back and look at the philosophers, and you know, not many of them were poor. You know, they were able to live a life of leisure and contemplate on these kind of issues. And so, time as being money, I thought kind of really struck me eventually. Theoretically, the way that we work, it is very much, if you have money, you have the ability to take your time to do things and to do as you please.
Okay, so what do you think, right quickly, I'm only going to take a couple more minutes for this, so we can move on to this other activity. What do you think this neighborhood, this community needs to do to make a change?
Organize.
Organize how?
They need community organizer to help them, number one, identify some of the resources that they're not being connected to.
So resources.
They need to organize so that they can demand that their elected officials represent them and their issues.
They need to they need to take back control over their environment, and I don't mean that, their circumstances, I should say.
Okay.
I think learning how to be alternative to the cultural, the opium of the masses, just all the things that control people's lives that they stay unconscious around, like TV, bad food, not understanding financial literacy, not understanding how they're working to make money to basically maybe pay, like my son, for example, who leaves his lights on all over his place, they leave the lights on all the time, and I'm thinking, you're putting too much money into your electricity every month. Like, even that thing alone would be helpful for them. Turn the TV off and be self-reflective.
Get outside.
Get outside, know your neighbors. Definitely know your neighbors.
Yeah, like teamwork as opposed to like all those like individual cars. I mean, that just kind of represents the individual cars, the individual houses. Like, they make it so definitive. They try and make it divided up all the time.
So what I think I heard a little bit is about identifying what the resources, some additional resources that they may need, right? Demand that your elected officials support some of the things that you're identifying, correct?
Right.
The issue. By doing this, you're taking control over your circumstances and shifting the power, right? Because you elect your officials to support the things that you would like to see happen. And then she was talking about becoming more green, kind of, in general. terms of turning off the television, turning off the lights, you know, alternative ways in order to get outside, you know, bringing.
I'm talking about being more conscious.
Being more conscious.
Not just living in this unconscious drone life that I see with people who have to work 2 jobs. You just go to work, you come home, you eat your food, you're too tired to make good food, you watch TV, you go to bed, you do the same thing over and over again. I mean, I'm talking about my own family. I am. Yeah, and I'm living.
Yeah. So getting out of that routine, right?
So that you're conscious, stay conscious, and then you'll be more educated about your officials and who you vote for, who your neighbors are. You know, connecting with organizers, connecting with resources.
Or becoming an organizer.
That's right.
Or becoming a resource.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that's a really important one, is like becoming a resource yourself and supplying your energy, no longer expecting things to come from the outside, but really realizing that you have a lot of power and control within yourself, and then taking that to the next step and going like, well, if I have all this power and control within myself and can do things, like what can we do together? Like harness that. We can, I mean, you can create a time bank. How awesome.
I think that connecting with other people builds on that.
And recognizing that actually we have a whole lot more control over our situation than we know that we have.
They're not staying busy enough in the summertimes, as far as, some of them are, it don't apply to everybody, but.
Okay, yeah, so lack of activity, or having more activity, more stuff for kids, for teens, for young people to do in the summertime. To anyone who's toward the back, if you want to come up more toward the front, we're going to do this together, so, and you'll be able to hear better.
Trying kind of in with that is like more community spaces where people can actually get together, because it's hard, right? Where do we get together? If you're privileged and have a nice big house, then you can get together there. But how do you do it for the rest of us? And how can we make it not about the private space, but about the community space and the community resources?
Cool. Does anyone have one more pressing one?
Connecting communities from very diverse communities. What's happening in Birmingham, and I know it's happening around the world, is people are segregating by income, by nationality, by race, whatever. And so Jim Crow is stronger now than it has been in the past, and it's so sad. So how do we reconnect and build a community that is broad rather than very isolated?
Great. All right. Oh.
It's expanding horizons. People, my neighborhood, don't try anything new because they don't have exposure to anything new. And so,
expanding horizons.
Bringing time credits out of the computer and putting them into a piece of paper. Because poor people don't have computers.
Specifically the homeless population who don't have money or computers or any of these sorts of things.
What do you think?
Homeless population?
Homeless what?
Population?
She's
engaging them.
Okay, I didn't hear that.
So here's what we're going to do. So the mechanics we won't deal with here because this is visioning about how we connect. But I want to address the mechanics because 2 people brought it up, which is even though computers and a web-based database make it a lot easier to maintain and house the information about time banking and keep accounts, you don't have to have a system where people have to use them. And I mentioned before that we match people who are offline with an online buddy who can help them access a computer. We have, or who can help them access other members. We have people who can call the coordinator and let us know what they need and what they want to do. And now we have an office where it's easy to drop in, so people can come in. We'll write up offers and requests on a dry erase board, and people can come in and find out what's going on. So you can do it without computers. And the software developer at TimeBanks USA is working on a platform that makes it available by phone. So we're working on a lot of different different ways to access the information and technology. So I wanted to address that, but this exercise doesn't go into that mechanics. But what I would like to do is I want to say this is all going to be one time bank because one time bank can accomplish these goals. So if you don't mind, I'm just going to make a little mission statement for the time bank, unless someone else wants to take this stuff and do it. And it's not going to be very mission statement-y. But we're going to make a time bank here with the goal of bringing people together, both activist groups and other groups of people who don't normally interact. And we're going to bring these people together around more activities for youth and more common spaces for people to gather. When this happens, it will expand their horizons. but I'm not going to put that in the mission statement right now because people are more likely to join the organization that's bringing people together to create common spaces and activities for youth. So we have a rallying point for people. They care about that. They want the youth to succeed, and they're going to see that they can invest their time and their talents in that.
Can I counter that or something? Which is, I think the expanding horizons is a really important idea to go into the actual statement. Because the thinking that got us where we are now is not the thinking that's going to get us out of here. And so if we're not constantly as a community pushing the idea of that, like, these boundaries and these limits that we have right now are just due to our mind. And if we're not,
put that in the mission statement.
Breaking boundaries.
Yeah, breaking our ideas that we currently have, that we should always be looking for the new, better ways of doing things. And that should be part of the mission statement, because a lot of groups, what happens is they get stuck in, the way we've always done it is this way, which can be great because it can be effective, but if you don't really tie that into the philosophical groundwork, I think it can hold people back.
Okay, thank you for saying that. So we'll put that back in the mission statement.
Sorry.
No, that's great. And I didn't say anything specifically about engaging homeless populations. So
I didn't put any population in here. I just,
okay. So what Cheryl's going to start with, you're going to do who to include.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so what we're going to do now is we're going to envision how we create a time bank that will help accomplish this mission. And this mission does include groups of activists and people who are homeless and people in all different types of communities with all different types of backgrounds. So Cheryl, do you want to help us think about who we need to bring to the table?
Okay, so
I can write if you want.
Okay. So, thinking about your communities, I'm taking you for real back to your own community, okay? I know we have our own little time bank here in the room with our own little mission statement. I want you to really, really think about if you were to develop a time bank in your neighborhood, think of some key people that you would want to make sure, not the ones you know will show up, but the ones that might be missing from your list, that you may be afraid to invite, that you may have forgotten about, that you want to make sure is a part of this effort because you see you have this goal. Okay? It may take time, that's the thing. It does take time because you got to go through a little transitional kind of period. So, who? Think about your neighborhood. Just want to take about 30 seconds and think. I want you to give them a name. Think about real people. And give me their first name, some characteristic about them, just one, so that it'll be related on this paper. And what do you think they might want to give? What do you think they might want to give or receive? Okay? Yes?
Are we just talking individuals or are you talking organizations?
I'm talking organizations. I'm talking people in your specific neighborhoods where you come from, your communities that you come from, for real. Okay.
And what we're going to create is a time bank that fills this mission. So also say the obvious ones too, because we want to write down everyone, and then we're all going to play our role as one of them. So
some activists.
Yeah. So the obvious and not obvious.
Obvious, activists.
Activists.
Homeless people.
I really want to name, this exercise is to begin, or in the name of an organization or a group, or a church, or a person. So who is that?
Who are the activists?
Well, I want to start with those that we, I want to start with what I proposed at first, so that we can complete that.
Okay.
And that is those that are missing. Okay.
The president of the bank.
What, you know his name?
No.
Okay,
That's
just
why-
president of the bank. And what do you think he might need or give?
Well,
Just one thing, just a
he would
bullet.
give credibility to
Credibility.
this means of bringing people together.
Okay.
Because he's not noted for being a community activist organizer.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to leave, but I'm just going to say, I would invite Miriam
Okay,
from my bank.
Miriam.
And she is a teller. She's actually not a teller, she works with people individually. And she's really excited about financial literacy.
Okay.
So I would invite Miriam. I like her a
Okay,
lot.
financial literacy, Miriam. Muriel. Yes. Miriam.
From my community.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know him, but.
No, I don't know him. This is to help you.
Cy Evans.
Cy Evans. This would be somebody that, yeah.
He's someone I know.
Okay.
Do I need to tell you who he is?
No, I just need a characteristic about him so that we will just really kind of bullet it. Something about it, like he's a musician, he's an artist.
He's an art teacher.
Art teacher, and what do you think he could give or needs to receive?
Well, I think that he could give a lot of inspiration to his kids. 'Cause
Inspiration.
a lot of a good example, whatever. And he also would. It also would help. He's kind of a isolator, in his own world. I know him personally, and he's kind of, So I think that he would get what he would get out of it would be maybe come out of his
Some community,
yeah.
extended family.
Companionship, you get
Something.
community.
You had your hand up, right?
Yeah, I don't
Thank
know.
you.
I feel bad because this exercise shows I don't know my neighborhood.
Yeah, right.
People
But that's why I want you to just
Yeah.
think. You could say,
Well, I know who this is. I was riding my bike one day and this lady, I nodded my head to her and her son, and she goes, "Hey, baby!" And she's just like the loudest. Like my aunt couldn't even say it that loud, and she didn't even know me. And she just seemed like it made me think of family. It made me think that she could be such like a nurturing person, and I feel that she could just give someone like that love that maybe they miss from their family, and she would get the feeling of being useful.
Bill, he's the president of my neighborhood association, and he's a magnetic leader. And what he would get out of it is other people to help him do the thousands of things that he does for our community. So he'd get the help he needs.
now is this somebody you would have thought of automatically if you were to form a time bank? I want you to think of those people that you wouldn't think of. No, she said both. She said both.
I was combining two
She
things.
was combining
and
them.
Cheryl's keeping
I'm
them
trying to-
separate, so
yeah.
I apologize. We'll start with the less obvious.
That's right. Okay.
I'd say Noble, who's the chief of police, because you need people that have kind of some authority to do some of these things.
Yeah, I was gonna say the fire department in my neighborhood, and I don't really exactly know. They would get all the things we listed out of it, but then I would also think that they don't live there, like they don't have their residence there, but they spend so much time there, and what difference would that create in a community if people who spend time in the community interacted the same way with the people who live there?
Anybody else?
Yeah. I don't remember his name, but there's a guy who's involved with, he's a returned citizen after doing time in a jail. And so people who, I guess, run in with the law.
He's a homecomer.
And what would he provide or need?
I don't know him that well. So I imagine he had skills before he went in. So probably like some technical skills as well.
We have a lot of homecomers coming out of prison who really want to help kids avoid getting into the situation they got into, and the fact that they have that kind of experience and grew up in similar circumstances can really have an impact on kids. So sometimes the asset is what was the deficit before, but he has whatever skills he went going in, plus the asset of experience that he can share.
Okay, so looking at this list, oh, one more, go on.
I'm not sure of his name, but he's the bag man in our community. He goes around and picks up plastic bags that are laying around. And it's like he just needs to be a street person. I think it would be, so he could, I guess, gain a lot of
bags. Show someone how to crochet.
Yeah.
So, okay, a couple more, yeah.
Well, with the theme of the homeless, we have Rodney Cole, he's a coordinator.
Rodney.
In Birmingham, but the need for transportation, the need for health care, the need for jobs. But again, a lot of those are not available because you don't have transportation, so transportation is really key.
Is an issue. Lori and then Chris.
You might want to try to find somebody from like a church or a faith-based organization to get involved as well.
Who? The name?
Somebody that, you know, that you don't already have, that would be missing off the list you already got at work.
The guy who leads the youth group? Yeah. Mr.
Okay,
Church.
Chris and then, what's your name? Becky.
Okay, so the guy who owns the liquor store.
Oh, thank you.
And his name is John.
John, the liquor store owner.
There we go. Now we roll.
The liquor.
Becky.
What did you say? What was the one after the
Becky.
liquor?
Becky.
Becky? And who's?
Becky's next.
No, I haven't
Oh,
done
she
it.
hasn't said
I
it
think
yet.
some people that are missing are youth
Very
in
good.
the community.
Very.
The names that I have right now are college students, but I would want to target the middle school and high schooler
Okay,
students that are
middle
going
school
to
and
be
high school.
involved.
Okay.
And senior citizens.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
I'm not sure of the scope of this group that you're looking for, but
No,
I'm
it's not.
thinking,
I'm just thinking about you and your neighborhood and your community. What is the scope? Where?
well, I'm thinking of Howard.
Okay, Howard.
Howard is my insurance agent.
Okay.
He works for State Farm. And,
Okay.
And State Farm, they sometimes
Hey.
sponsor organizations, and so I'm thinking that you need some people from that world to bring in funds to help you get organized.
Okay, there you go. Yes, and then you.
Mike, the tire guy, he changes all the tires in our neighborhood, and he has a whole pile of tires. That's good for gardening, but on top of that, he probably teach people how to change their own tires. That might put him out of business, though.
No, it's more business.
Yeah.
And then
We've got
Tony.
two, I can't remember the second one first. The cat lady, she feeds all the homeless cats in the neighborhood. Oh, I had another one, but I forgot it.
Well, we'll go to Tony and you can think.
Clarence.
Clarence.
He goes to all the community meetings and the city council meetings and raises hell all the time.
We have Clarence in Oakland. Yeah. Yes.
I'm going to call her Desiree, the librarian.
Okay.
From the neighborhood, yeah.
Okay.
And they would, librarians are like the smartest people I know. So the knowledge and organization.
Now, after Lori, I'm going to ask you a question, make you think deeper.
I'd say Mimi from the community center.
Mimi from the community center. What we're doing is thinking about if we were to start a time bank, who would be some of the people that we wouldn't think about going to get immediately. You know, these are young folks that after the fact is, oh God, I forgot about the cat lady. You know, she could join our time bank. Or what about the veteran? Is he there? Do you see your veterans there? Is your veteran on your list? Okay, you got your youth. Someone said senior. Somebody said the seniors, right? When we said the youth. You have your different ethnicities. Are they represented? Now, you know who these people are because you call their name out. But are your various different ethnicities represented here? Now, only you know. You can answer this because you came up with the names. Right? Different cultural groups. Have you moved outside of your own group when you talked about these various people? Yes or no? Just admit it. Just say no. Yes.
A little bit.
A little bit. Okay. In terms of socioeconomic status, have you moved outside your group? You know what I mean? Okay. In your faith, your spiritual, whatever your...
I wanted to put mosque up there too.
Well, put mosque.
Yeah. 'Cause
Somebody
that's in
from the
my neighborhood.
masjid or from the mosque. Yeah. You know, just trying to expand your thinking. Because when you're working and you're doing your work, you have a tendency to kind of stay within your comfort zone. Right? You forget about Mr. Schwartz over here who served in the military for many years and blah, 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 blah. Right? And he always sits on the bench over here at the park. Just don't even think about going to talk to him about doing a time bank. We have a tendency to kind of start in our comfort zone. Yeah.
You gotta learn to look at friendship.
The local print shop. So he's thinking about getting things
You've got
done.
experience.
See, that's what he's doing. He's trying to get things done. And I'm trying to bring in this whole multicultural component is what I'm trying to do. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's really important, like what you said when I walked in, you were talking about that your flyers are always in English and Spanish, and I was thinking about that, like I have a lot of Ethiopian, like how to really present the idea to the community as a whole without coming at it from my perspective, but coming at it from like what serves the community.
And bringing them in to help design your flyer.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we do. We bring, try to get that core group together that might turn out to be your advisory board. Is it really representing all of the elements and groups that you're in and organizations that you're trying to serve so that you have their voice there to help develop your time bank, right? Right? So because you don't want it just to come from that one, what do you call it? The person who starts everything, you know? Yeah, you get started, but that's the way you do it. You just never know if you go knock on Miss Johnson's, what's the guy you said, the woman? If you actually turn to her and says, hey, hi, you know?
Miss Hey Baby.
Miss
Hey Baby. Right? She might be just the connector you need to help grow your time bank. So you want to take it to where you want it to go.
Sure, yeah. So we have the people that you might not have thought of at the beginning when you made your mission statement. Now we'll put the obvious people. Our mission for this time bank is to bring activists, people who are homeless, people who are all different populations together, including those least likely to participate, in order to break boundaries, to do things differently. Specifically, we're going to create more activities for youth and more community spaces where we can gather. So that's our mission, creating more activities for youth, more spaces we can gather by bringing people together from different backgrounds. So who are the obvious parties we need to bring to the table that came to mind right away?
Parks and Recreation.
Parks and Recreation. You can just start yelling them out.
Yes.
School.
School.
Homeless shelters.
Homeless shelters.
Faith communities.
Okay, faith communities.
Media.
Media.
Community centers.
Community centers.
Theater.
Yeah, artists.
Artists. Theater.
Battered women's shelter.
Women's shelters.
College students.
College students.
Yeah. City council.
Great.
Gang members.
What was the last thing?
Gang members.
Okay, great.
Very good.
Gang members.
Professional athletes.
Professional athletes.
Trying to bring the kids.
Yeah.
criminal justice.
Unprofessional athletes.
Okay, what'd you say, criminal justice system?
Gentrifiers.
Gentrifiers.
That's good.
Educators, current, retired.
Educators, current and retired. That's awesome.
Yeah.
A lot of retired educators are really into wanting to continue to use it. A lot of retired people want to use their skills, right? I mean, your skills don't go away when you retire. One of our early members, I forget what country she was from, but she is Latino, and she wanted to be involved because she thought it was really depressing how people come to this country with all these professional skills and backgrounds, and they come here and they're not licensed and they wash dishes in a restaurant. And she wanted to give people the opportunity to really tap into their higher level skills.
The undocumented.
Yeah.
Undocumented, yes. And I'm going to mention, we have made it a policy that we stand by, even when we've been pushed, that we don't ever ask for a social security number for anything ever, no matter what someone wants us to do. If they need a social security number or something specific, they can ask for it, and the people can choose to give it or not, but we don't do it.
When we start out, we don't ask for phone numbers or anything, because we want to build relationships first before people feel, so that they can feel comfortable before they share their personal information.
Prostitutes.
Prostitutes.
Ooh.
That's in terms of, the undocumented. Prostitutes. Yeah.
Like the business owners, like the owner of the laundromat, the owner of the corner store.
The barber shop.
Yeah.
The nail shop.
Yeah.
Nail shop.
AA.
Almost.
Ooh.
AA.
Cool. So I'm gonna, we have a lot of people and organizations up there. So first of all, think about the roles that you yelled out. If you didn't yell any out, think about what you want to play, and we're just gonna play a game. We're gonna do exchanges. I want you to think about what each of these people has to give and receive, and we're not gonna focus on just things that go toward the mission. We're gonna have all kinds of exchanges, but we're gonna be thinking about what our mission is. We wanna create more space for young people to gather, more things for them to do in the summertime, and more general communal gathering spaces. We're going to use the time bank to accomplish that goal, and all these people are going to do exchanges of all kinds to help accomplish that goal. So where do we want to start? What would be the first thing you'd want to do? I mean, I don't mean like in terms of the first thing you do to get this going, but just think of an exchange. You might want to think of something that you're going to ask someone to do right away to do the activities for youth, and we'll go from there.
I was thinking about like my imaginary world. If I worked for like the fire department and I had like a weekend off, I could take kids camping, and get them out of the community.
Okay.
And that could be something that and then it's beneficial for everybody because who doesn't like camping?
Okay, so someone from the fire department is going to take the kids camping,
Yeah.
and that person is going to earn some time bank hours. What do you want to spend those on?
How about some sort of class at the community center, like a yoga class?
Okay.
Or something.
So the firefighter is going to take kids out to the community. We're going to take kids out camping, and then spend the time bank hours on yoga. I'm just going to kind of draw it as a picture.
Oh, yeah, you do that good.
Fire department.
She does good on this one.
And here's one of the guys. He's taking the kids camping. And then he is going to go get some yoga. What's the yoga instructor going to do? What's the yoga instructor going to get with their time bank hour?
The yoga instructor happens to be the lady that says, hey, whatever. That's me.
Hey, baby.
Hey, baby.
I'm hey, baby.
All right, what do you need, baby?
I'm also a yoga instructor, but he doesn't know this. I think I need something. I need, I lost all my family, so I need some extended family. So I need to belong to something, some kind of group or whatever.
So would you spend your time bank hours to go to an event at the theater?
I don't have
go to
any
an
time
arts?
bank hours yet. I'm coming in.
You just earned some because
Oh,
he took
I
yoga
earned some
from
because
you.
I did yoga. Okay. Wow. Okay. Let's see. I want to go and participate at the Parks and Recs with some of the kids.
Oh, okay, so you're
Some of the
gonna go
activities.
do some activities for kids?
For kids.
Okay.
Ooh, adult-child interaction, community bridging,
Yeah, just wanna be
bridging
around
the
the
age
kids.
gaps.
So you could earn time bank hours for that. So you earn 2 things of time bank hours, and then what are you gonna spend them on?
I'll spend them on, receiving,
Taxes.
yeah, get my nails done.
All right. Nails. So the nail shop owner, who's the nail shop owner? Or who did the nails?
I did.
All right. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna get?
I would like to get some kids from the school to come sweep up my shop.
All right. So kids will sweep up the shop.
What about the labor thing? Can they just do that? How would that? I'm just
Yep.
asking a question. I know the answer, but.
Oh, they can do it, yeah.
No, they can't?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
they're
not like
allowed
work?
to.
Oh, okay.
No, it's not
Their
like work
parents
because there's no money exchanged and their parents
Have agreed to it?
Their
Oh.
parents know about it.
Okay.
So what about the kids who sweep the shop? Now let's think about our mission and think about if you're the coordinator and you are helping facilitate that. What are the kids who went and swept? First of all, they had an activity to do during the summer. Second, what are they gonna do? What are you gonna encourage them to spend their time bank hours on in order to keep that going and further the activities? I want the person who first further.
Summer camp with the camp element, which would end up having a lot of people with artists and other sports people doing a series of different activities in the space.
So you pay time bank hours for your artists and people, and what space are we gonna use? Who here can provide space? We have one on here, we have some there. Schools, parks and rec. So, where do we end up going? It doesn't matter. So we'll go a camp, and we'll get space, we'll ask schools, we'll ask parks and rec.
Bar owners who don't utilize their space during the day.
Who? Bars. We've got the theater. I'm guessing they have some space that's not always used.
Kitchen.
Faith.
Yeah,
Churches.
Synagogues and
Yeah.
mosques and
Kitchen.
kitchens.
Question.
Kitchen.
In watching all of this take place, what happens if you have a person who they donate their time, but there's no one to exchange? I mean, there's no service
That they need?
So what happens in that case?
Well, what we do is we try to recruit the service they need and ask other people to recruit it, but there's no guarantee that there will be, but that's why we cast a wide net. And we haven't really had, I mean, sometimes people earn a lot of time bank hours and don't find a way to spend them that they want to, and it's okay if they feel okay about it. If they don't, they'll stop doing it. We did at the very beginning of our system. I was really sad because we had someone come in who had great carpentry skills and everybody wanted his skills. The only thing he wanted was help re-roofing his house, and he couldn't find anyone to do it. It was when we had about 30 members at the very beginning. And I mean, he was the carpentry guy, and other people just didn't feel like they had it in him, and he was discouraged, and he left. So it happens sometimes, but that's why when you cast a wider net and really go out and recruit, and you can also help him explore some of the things he wasn't thinking of otherwise, like, well, you could have someone do your laundry or give you a ride or do your shopping or something.
Because you can offset the cost of maybe actually paying for the roofing if you're able to get other things done.
Or to kind of tie it into the other thing that I brought up about the expanding the horizon of like, well, okay, so nobody knows how to fix a roof, but like everybody needs a roof. So why isn't there anyone in our community who knows how to fix a roof? And like, I'm going to use my time bank hours to figure out, I want us to get together and learn how to do a roof. And like, we can add kind of an educational element to the time bank process to really engage the community in being able to be self-sufficient about what they need, which seems pretty basic, like economics, like there should be something, if someone wants something, someone should be able to give that to them, and if we can collaborate, we're more likely to do it.
So then we'll use the time bank to find a way to build our skills, to bring someone in and teach us how to make the roof. And we'll take one more and then we'll wrap this part up.
And then it's also just not thinking of what you need, but sometimes it's also thinking of what you don't want to do. I love the example that Kim from Lakewood Village always uses, that she had someone come over and clean out of her fridge for 3 hours. So there's always something that you can think of that you do want, actually.
And there's actually people that like stuff like that. They really like.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
true. Yeah, someone cleaned Lori's gutters the other day. People clean gutters.
Yeah, well, also when people had a surplus of time credits, they created their own foundation.
Oh.
And then, and so people became they became philanthropists with their time dollars, and they would make a grant to the nursing home or a grant to a school system, and they would decide what would be a project that or what would be a need that they wanted to address.
True philanthropy.
That's one of the things that I think about, like how we're used to, all the community organizers and people who want to do good work in the community, we're really used to competing with each other for crumbs, and this is a way we can get together and bake our own pie. But exactly.
That pie has some everything.
So let's just take a quick look at this. So it looks like a big mess. A lot of times we do this where we throw string, and everyone like hangs onto their bit of string and throws it to the next person, and then we have a big web. But what have we done here? What have we done to accomplish our mission?
Beautiful chaos.
Well, everyone's together now.
Mm-hmm. Everyone's together. We had some youth activities going on. Some of them are going to just keep going because they're going to keep doing the exchanges. I could go to the movies because I went and cleaned up the park. I'm going to keep doing that. I like to keep seeing movies. So not only did it happen, you didn't just organize something that happened once and it's done, organize a new thing. You set all these relationships in motion. You set all these systems in motion. You got people to realize the resources that are in their community. You got them to realize how they can tap them and how they can use it to expand the resources that each one of them has. So this is an example of how you can approach time banking in your own community to fill the mission you want to fill. Are there any gaps that we've left here on our time
Can I ask
bank?
just a quick question? In relating to businesses, for instance, maybe like a theater, is there any way that they start beginning to understand the actual value of something, where they start seeing, like, if there's no demand when they put this out, like a request for kids to stand out in the sun and wear a stupid, Statue of Liberty outfit or something, like, they immediately see like how little someone wants to do this, and maybe they have to change their mentality on what they make people do. That could be really interesting.
That's a really interesting concept.
Yeah, because no one ever gets to have feedback on how stupid a job is. They just get money, and so it's like, all right, we're cool. But if you have a choice, you're like, it's all fair, it's all an hour. If I'm cleaning out a fridge or standing on the corner doing the Statue of Liberty dance.
That makes it, I have to share this with you because I was meeting with someone we haven't had great luck with the Chamber of Commerce. We've had them several times agree to participate and then they never do. But the last time I met with someone from Chamber of Commerce, I was talking with him and he was all excited about it. And I was just asking him, what he thought his members would think of it. He's like, I just have to check in with our members because I could see them thinking that if this really took off, people wouldn't do the really bad jobs that they have anymore. And I was like, I can't believe you just said that.
And you're totally
that's
right.
the point.
Yeah. I just had a quick process question. Is there, what are the rules about, let's say I'm the carpenter and everybody wants my services. What are the rules about me just saying no?
Anyone can say no anytime, but we would take down his offer if he really needed a break because we don't want to waste people's time. So we're going to wrap up, but I just want to quickly hear from you. What stands out for you about the thing we just did? What are the highlights? What's exciting about it? And then I'll tell you about ways that you can follow up and do some of this in real life. So just anything that you've gotten out of this exercise or the thing overall.
Well, for me, I'm working at Tulane, and every student is required to do community service. It's a pretty extensive process. But what's happened with that is that there's this attitude about, I'm doing this good thing and providing this service for this community, and they don't understand that the community can provide anything for them too. So whereas this community service is so altruistic, and where the time banking would actually help show them that they're a part of the community, they're not just helping.
What else? Any highlights?
One takeaway, there's a community outside Washington DC, Tacoma Park, Maryland, that does this. They have Tacoma bucks, but it's one of those really lefty little progressive communities, enclaves, and it's rather expensive to live there actually. So, you know, the question is, can you do this if you're not living in a place like that? You know, it's harder work to create it in another neighborhood, but I'm sure it would be worth the effort.
Yeah, and it's in all kinds of neighborhoods. It's in all kinds of places. Cheryl's thing did not start in a lefty enclave. It started in a very low-income neighborhood, and it was about reducing the violence that was occurring in that neighborhood.
I have a question. So like I have a friend in Boulder that was like talking about doing this, but he's got like degrees and like he's like I went to all the schooling, and so we were talking about like how does that play into it, like someone's skill set versus, you know what I mean? Like how does that play into it where you have someone that's like a lawyer, you know, offering their services versus
Everyone's time is equal, and people join voluntarily knowing that, and if someone has a problem with it, they won't be part of the time bank, but people tend to, I think a lot of people will come in with the money idea, like someone was like, oh, well, I teach Spanish, and usually I get $40 an hour for it, but I'm just getting a time dollar, but that's okay because I'm getting my computer repaired, and that usually costs a lot of money. But like once you get, I mean, what we want to do is give people enough experience that you just bust out of that and realize that you're doing an hour teaching someone Spanish, and it's, you know, worth an hour of someone.
Well, I guess his argument was I spent, you know, X number of time learning how to do this.
Yeah. It might encourage people to use their, I mean, when you post your offer, you say your skill level and credentials, and people might use their services more often because they have a higher level of skill. But that's a principle of time banking, and if people want to do something where they can negotiate a higher rate, they would want to use a different system. But sometimes lawyers and doctors will do it instead of some of the work they would do pro bono, or they think of it as like part of their service. And some people do it as a way to grow their practice or business too, because it exposes people to what you can do. But it's equal, and that's a principle of time banking.
Entitlement reveals his privilege.
Oh yeah.
What I was wondering about is do members have to pay their membership every month?
We don't have a membership fee at all. Yeah, some time banks have a membership fee, and that's to cover their basic expenses, and it's usually a yearly fee. And we've established that if we ever have a member fee, which our board could decide to have a membership fee, and we might have to sometimes because there are hard costs associated with running a time bank, but we try to avoid it. But if we ever do establish a membership fee, we have committed to, we would take it in time bank hours also, because you don't want to exclude people because they don't have access to money, because that's the point.
Oh, yeah. Can I just add something? Also,
Your individual members don't pay a fee, but your organizations do, so that's a big thing. And the other thing is...
Yes, based on their budget.
Right, yeah, and the other thing is quite a number of time banks actually make it a donation and say, can you donate somewhere between $10 and $40 a year, or $1 and $5 a month, or however they think it's right for their community. Yeah, so that way people give what they can.
Well, I guess I've just got a lot of negative tapes, and a lot of us do, you know, about what it is that any organization is trying to gain from something, whatever. And so it's just meaningful. It's almost unbelievable, and it's just a wonderful idea, though. You know, and to where the money's out of the picture on it. And I'm sure there's funds that are needed for certain things, but where we're making a profit and these people are becoming millionaires for it is out of it, and then it's just something that's really bring communities together. It's a really nice idea. I like it.
You mentioned the Bernard Lietaer and you know, the abundance of talent and skill and resource that exists in a community, and the abundance of need. And one of the things that he said in the book that I read that got me to change my whole life and start a time bank in my community was he gives a little anecdote about what if a Martian came to Detroit and looked around and saw all the crumbling infrastructure, boarded up buildings, kids coming home from school with nothing to do, nowhere to go, no one to take care of them. And then also saw the people sitting around bored, feeling worthless because they don't have work, and then learns, you know, what are these people waiting for? And someone explains, well, they're waiting for money to connect the skills and the talents with the needs. And he asks, well, what is money? Well, money is an agreement to exchange something, to exchange something for something else. Then the Martian, once he learned that, would wonder if there was intelligent life on the planet. And that just really struck me, and I had the same reaction you did when I read about it, like, oh, why haven't we been doing that all along, and it must be too good to be true. And I also got in a situation where I found it, I kept reading about all these positive impacts, as you would expect, when people come together and share their gifts as equals. I kept reading about it and thinking it sounded too good to be true, and then I remember getting on some phone calls with people who had time banks. I was like, what? This really happens? So, but now, with the Dane County Time Bank in Madison that we started, is going to turn 5 in October. We have over 1,600 members. 100 of those are organizations, a lot of human service organizations, schools, our utility companies, a member, and everyone is participating in a system of equal exchange. They've exchanged about 60,000 hours of service so far. We've used it to create a youth court program to keep kids out of the juvenile justice system. One of our schools that was having a lot of trouble is using it to help bring more resources into the school. We'll tell you a lot more in depth about some of these specific projects, how they work, how you can make that stuff happen in your community, and you will participate in figuring out what your dreams are and how you can use it. So this will become more participatory after we give you the overview. But I was going to tell you the history of time banking, but we are fortunate enough to have the founder of time banking, Edgar Cahn, here. So I'd like him to tell how it started and whatever else you want to say about it. You might have to yell.
It started, as I said, in a hospital bed, but it also started because I came out of the civil rights movement, and it was clear we were winning some battles and losing the war on everything that mattered, to me anyway. And I thought the most important thing we could do would be to say to people for whom the market had no use that what you have to offer is special and needed, that every human being has not just one thing, but if you ask yourself what portion of you is on your resume, if it's even 5% of who you are, I'd be surprised. Most people do not put on their resume that they know how to tie their shoes. But if you think about kids in preschool, they need to learn how to tie their shoes. And we don't know anybody who is coming out of, many of the dropout kids whom we deal with could easily teach first and second graders the alphabet and simple arithmetic. But instead we classify them as special ed students, and by the time
They're a luxury to volunteer. If you're working 3 jobs to make ends meet, a lot of times you're not going to have time to volunteer. But time making brings people in to do stuff for each other who don't normally volunteer, and brings in a whole new cadre of people who can do things for each other and who will engage in helping out in their community. And we recognize that the type of work that people do as volunteers, there's no reason that work should be done for free, where some very destructive work earns tons of money. So that's one of the things, is recognizing that every kind of work has value, whether it's community building, caregiving, anything, and it has equal value. And that's frankly, when I first started our time bank, that wasn't what I was attracted to about time banking. I was attracted to time banking as something that we could do instead of having to beg for money for every little project that we want to do. We can go ahead and do our project and use our time and talents to create the exchange. But once I got involved in time banking and was immersed in participating in an economy as equals, it feels really different and it feels really good. And I think a lot of our members get that, but you kind of need to try it out before you realize it. And we have members who come to the time bank because they need rides to the doctor and have no other way to get them, so their social worker will refer them to the time bank. We have people who come to the time bank because they need a roof put on their house and they don't have any way to do it. And then they get involved and learn through experience about different people from different backgrounds, different levels of ability, and learn through experience about the fact that an economy based on equality and based on recognizing everyone's assets feels really good, and it feels really different, and it's possible, and it's real. So that's sort of the overview. At this point, there are time banks in 32 countries around the world. Edgar has a list if you need to. Oh no, 33. if you need some, and there are around 100 time banks in this country, and it's really taking off. And there's no better time than right now when people are really seeing firsthand what's wrong with the market economy. We have a really great opportunity to fill the void with something very positive, and I think it's really important that we really work to do that. And as you probably are aware, a lot of times when we end up in economic strife, that's when people get pitted against each other. That's when we're divided and conquered. This is a way that we can unite and conquer. So that's a big part of why I do it. So Cheryl, would you like to talk about the core values?
So there are 5 core values.
I better go first.
Okay. Okay.
I'll go with reciprocity.
Okay. And what do you?
Basically, the idea of both giving and receiving. Like I was talking about before, there's a lot of people who are service recipients, but time banking gives them the opportunity to also give and know what it feels like to do something helpful for somebody else and be needed a little bit in that way. So.
Yeah, it's better when it's a two-way street.
Two-way street, yeah.
It's a two-way street, yeah. Okay?
Also, it's also good for, there's a lot of people too that just volunteer and give and give and give and don't recognize that they also have needs that other people can help them address. Everybody has things that they need or want, and everybody has things that they can do for other people.
Lisa, you have one?
I'll go with redefining work.
Redefining work.
So with time banking, sometimes again going back to core economy or market economy, sometimes there's a much higher value if somebody is getting paid to do something, and we all do things that are valuable every day. And how do we redefine that in a way that it's seen as valuable and can contribute and be part of the community? So especially if I'm a person with disabilities and I actually, in order to access my Medicaid services, if I am penalized to go out and make certain levels in the work world. I have lots I can contribute and be part of that and redefining what that means to the work world. So there's lots of examples of how we all want to be valued and contribute. So how do we redefine that in a way that everybody feels part of, that their work is valuable, without it just being monetary?
I'm going to take one. I'll take assets. We all have something to give. We all have something to give. We all are contributors. Many times, I don't know if we're trained to think that we have less. I don't know what it is about. I'm serious. It's just like we all feel like we just, this, when you're introducing this whole concept, and you may start off a meeting like we did, people will say, well, I don't have anything to give. But everybody has something to give. Everybody in this room, everybody in this world has something to give. No matter what your race, ethnicity, your abilities are, we all have something to give. So I like assets. You have one? Okay, I'm good. Okay.
So I'm taking community. And the community value is that we are stronger together. It's very simple that when we become isolated, we're just not fulfilled in nearly the same way as when we're together with others, sharing our strengths. So that's the community value of time banks.
I'll mention the last one that we added we call respect, because we all take each other for granted, and people are silent, and we think that the voices of people need to be heard and listened to and amplified, and that we need to hold officials accountable. We need to hold everybody accountable because we speak on behalf of those who are silent and who have been silent a long time. But I want to say something about each of those values. You can talk about them as a positive value to be advanced, but they have a flip side, and that when you look at what the world is from a perspective of injustice, each one of those has a different, comes out differently. Assets to me means stop throwing away people. No more throwaway people. Work means stop the free rides that we take off of women and immigrants and minorities. And reciprocity means stop exacting dependency as the price of help. And community means to stop invoking privacy and confidentiality to keep people isolated and apart from each other. And respect means stop exacting silence and pretending that because people don't have... In 5th and 6th grade or 4th grade, the light's going out of their eyes. And so part of it is how do we begin to put people and needs together? In terms of, we started with trying to reduce the number of people who went into nursing homes. Now in Montpelier, Vermont, we're testing a new form of long-term care insurance, where people pay regular premiums in time dollars and a little bit of money to pay the coordinator. And the notion is that if they have a specific need, they will have a level of guaranteed assurance, because there'll be a whole bunch of people who will be paying their premiums in time dollars, maybe helping each other, maybe doing a community project, maybe working with a nonprofit. So that the number of uses are multiplying. In Washington, D.C., I oversaw the founding of a youth court that now handles 70% of all nonviolent crime by teenagers, and the teenagers are on the jury, or about 80% of them are former offenders, talking to kids who did just what they did a few months before. They've reduced recidivism by over 50%. They're doing more, frankly, for the rule of law than my law students. And so I think that we need to really say, how do we begin to rebuild community? I'll simply say this. When I started asking myself, how do we put people and needs together, and in what my sons call olden days, we used to use money to do that. And I thought, well, why can't we, if we're not going to have any of the old kind of money, why can't we create a new kind of money? And the critical issue for me became price. How do you value what people have? And when I looked at money, I realized that money defines value in a way that I couldn't live with. Money defines value very usefully when it comes to scarcity. So that if a thing is scarce, it's more expensive. If it's more valuable. If it's more abundant, it's cheaper. If it's really abundant, it's dirt cheap or worthless. And I suddenly realized that that meant that every capacity that defined me as a human being was worthless. Every capacity that enabled our species to survive, we have devalued. Our willingness to care for each other, to teach each other, to come to each other's rescue, to make democracy work, to raise hell about things we want to raise hell about, to take care of the elderly, to hold officials accountable. All of the fundamental capacities that we need, we devalue. And I thought it's about time we started valuing what it meant to be a human being and all the ways in which human beings could help each other. And that really meant creating a medium of exchange that valued that, because what a medium of exchange does is it creates a database around capacity and a database around need, and enables you to put the two together. And so part of this has been made possible really by personal computers and software, and now internet-based software that enables us to know whom we can trust, who's available, what skills there are, and it's being used in different ways. I was mentioning to all of us that it's being used in prisons in Scotland. We've created a homecomers academy in Washington, D.C. It's being used with the elderly. It's being used in mental health. Lisa will tell you about how it's being used for families whose kids have either bipolar or schizophrenic or autism or have special emotional needs, so that the nature of and the range of needs is really unlimited. And I'll simply stop there and say that I'm excited to be here because it's about social justice.
Thanks. So one of the things that Edgar was referring to about the abundance of what makes us human, caregiving and civic engagement and creativity, is something we refer to as the core economy. So the market-based economy overlooks a whole lot of activity that happens and a whole lot of need and a whole lot of skill. And so time banking is a way that we can lift up the core economy and recognize the value. A lot of the core economic tasks through history have been relying on exploited labor or traditional gender roles that people have broken out of, and rather than find a new constructive way to fill that, we've sort of let it wither on the vine in different ways, but of course it keeps chugging along because we require it in order to sustain our lives. But using time banking to facilitate and value without commodifying, we don't put a price on stuff, we don't charge for taking care of kids, but to facilitate it and value it without commodifying it can really help to boost and increase the level of availability to those resources. For example, the kids coming home from school with no one to come home to. They might have a neighbor who can read with them or play with them, and they don't know about it until they join the time bank and list the assets that everybody in the community has. So time banking, I'm going to say the mechanics just to make sure that everybody knows, because it's simple, and then we'll talk a little bit more about the philosophy, and then we'll move into actual projects that are happening. But the mechanics of it are people or organizations will join their time bank, and as part of joining it, you list what you can do for other people, and you list what you need. And it can be something as simple as visiting someone who's homebound, or teaching a young kid to tie his shoes. It can be complicated, like fixing a computer or teaching a language, anything at all. It doesn't have to be marketable. What we use is some web-based software, so we'll list offers and requests, and people will spell out exactly what their experience is. I'm a total amateur, but I love to do this, or I have credentials in this area. So people list out so people can make an informed choice about who they want to call, and they list out what they need. Every hour you spend helping another member, you get an hour in your account. You can call it a time dollar, a time bank hour, time credit. It's called different things in different places, but it's always an hour per hour. You can break it down. You can do 15 minutes of service and have 15 minutes in your account, but everyone's time is valued equally. We don't say that there's a price to it. We don't give it a monetary equivalence at all. And then once you've earned your hour, you can go and spend it to get help from another member. One of the things about time banking, it's a form of mutual credit. Some of you have probably learned about some of these types of systems. It's a form of mutual credit, so it means we extend credit to each other. So in many time banks, if not, I guess most time banks, you can spend your time bank hours before you earn them. I always tell our members, we don't care, we're not accountants, this isn't the point. The point for us is to facilitate the exchange. We want people to get what they need and to use their time and talents the way they want to use them. So in our time bank, someone will join because they really need help moving really fast. So they'll get a crew of people to come and help them move, and then they'll have a balance of minus how many hours they needed to use, and they can make that up doing whatever they like, whenever they like, however they like. So it's very flexible. And the way a lot of times people connect it in their minds with volunteerism, and one of the beauties of time making is volunteering tends to attract people who grow up in a volunteerism sort of environment, and people who feel either like they have a duty